now entering the Bass Galaxy.
This is Teal's Bass Galaxy. I'm your host. This podcast is about raw, real conversations with real awesome people about bass fishing, bass boats, and heck, there are no limits in the galaxy. Attention all Bastronauts. This podcast is supported by the Bass Galaxy's title sponsor, Waypoint Angler Supply, the Midwest's new landing pad for hardcore anglers just like you and me. If you're looking for the sneaky goods you can't find anywhere else, look no further. Waypoint Angler Supply has the largest offering of JDM tackle in the Midwest, and they are right here in Minnesota on Lake Minnetonka. This is truly a place every bass fisherman in Minnesota needs to visit because we finally have a tackle shop in the state that's as dreamy as the ones you find down south. And the staff at Waypoint Angler Supply understands the various needs of us anglers, which is why you'll find the selection there so enticing. Ross and the folks at Waypoint Angler Supply are passionate about carrying the right stuff, providing an authentic customer experience, and they listen to the anglers. And it doesn't end at JDM baits. They stock all the top U.S. brands, as well as local Minnesota brands like Veselka Fishing and Customs, Arsenal Fishing, Bait Lab Custom Swim Baits, All Terrain Tackle, Bagley Northland, Outcast Tackle, and more. So stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. Use the code GALAXY20 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. Tonight's guest, we've got not only a friend, but the great, the powerful, almighty hammer of Andy Walls joining us. This guy's won a boat, he's won a bunch of stuff, and he's got a little different style of fishing than I'm used to. So I always enjoy talking to him. We get into these long, weird conversations, so we're going to share this one with you guys. Here we go. Hello, Bastronauts. This is a message of gratitude for myself, all your support that you've shown the Bass Galaxy and Teal's Bass Galaxy podcast, and just very grateful to all the guests and people who've tuned in so far. We want to keep this show rolling for all of you who keep tuning in. So it'd be great if you'd be willing to subscribe to our YouTube channel and support, all the great sponsors that keep the Bass Galaxy rolling and ever expanding. And always open to feedback, but your support is greatly appreciated. So hit that subscribe button, check out our sponsors, and we look forward to bringing you even more intergalactic content. Thank you. Yeah, and you're living down on Minnetonka now.
Yeah, the beautiful Lake Minnetonka. Yeah, just a gem. It's a place, that's for sure. I don't like the boat traffic out there, but I love the lake. It's fun to fish. But yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with it, if you can't tell.
Well, yeah, I mean, you fished for the dumbest bass in the world up north
right.
Your whole life. Now you got to fish for these bass with their doctorate's degrees and fucking plastic worms.
I've been beating the game for a long time, and I didn't even know I had it on easy mode, and I was like, Oh man, really? That was easy mode this whole time? And just deflated. It was the first time playing with my buddies, right? Then you go out there and you're like, oh shoot, this is tough. This is a really tough lake. You think you know how to bass fish and how to approach something, and then you go out there and you're like, well, maybe sometimes that's right, but not maybe as much as you thought it might have been.
Right. And you've kind of been living in the shadows, I think, a little bit compared to, recently. And I guess I noticed something. You've always been a dominant angler in the state. And I feel like you made a move to Tonka for a reason, I guess. And I guess maybe it had something to do with your relationship. But, what was there a little bit more to it than that? Or I guess, why have you been spending so much time out there?
No, it's just solely because that's where I live now. It was for the relationship is why I moved here. I would have never left the northern part of the state. It's just, like, it's beautiful up there. There's a lot less people. You can go fish where you want to on the lakes. Like, it's really easy for the fisherman side of things. But, you know, reality is that there's a lot more to life than just fishing. And that's why I'm down here. And subsequently, like, I get to fish Tonka all the time. And it's probably, like, of the lakes down here that have the tournament action that I would want to be on, it's the one. So I'm pretty blessed there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been like a rocky relationship so far, man. Like, it's love hate. Some days that we are like on the same page, and there's other days that I just like I'm done.
I feel like you have a unique perspective on things, and I guess I've enjoyed talking to you just in general, and I've enjoyed fishing with you. But I guess for people who maybe don't know, I remember we've talked a little bit about like our first time we got into bass fishing, right? And just to give a little backstory to everybody, you're from the Northland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did this all start? Because you've won a boat, you've won pretty much everything there is to win. So, like, when you guys started bass fishing, where did that go down, and who did that go down with? Because you fished with everybody too.
Yeah, you know, the bass thing for me started young. Like, I grew up kind of with my grandparents, and they had a cabin on Rainy Lake up on the Canadian border, and they had a home on a lake in the Brainerd-Baxter area, just a little lake called White Sand. So, like, I spent a majority of my time on the dock, whether it be up on Rainy Lake or at the dock on White Sand. So I kind of just self-taught myself. Bluegills and largemouth kind of on White Sand. On Rainy, I caught smallmouth off the dock, and that was basically it. Occasional northern. So, like, that kind of got me into fishing, and my grandpa loved to fish, and we fished both places all the time together. But more of a walleye guy. Like, he liked to go catch fish to eat, and that's kind of like what our game was. And when I got sick one summer, like in 6th or 7th grade, maybe 8th. It had to be like 6th grade, but I got sick, and I was like stuck in the midsummer. I was at home and bored as heck, and it was the weekend, and I turned the TV on, ESPN, and Bassmasters was on, and it was the classic. And I think it was a replay, but I hadn't seen it, and it was like Mike Iaconelli winning on the Louisiana Delta when he won the first one. And I I knew about bass fishing with my cabin on Rainy, where there's tournaments up there, and like we could see them taking off and stuff, and I knew about it, but I didn't realize it could be a career until that day. And that's when I kind of fell in love with bass more than any other species, because I was like, oh, you can pursue this like maybe a little differently.
Yeah.
And from then on, like, every opportunity I had to get to go fishing with my grandpa, I'd be like, let's go bass fish, let's go bass fish, let's go bass fish. And yeah, that's kind of like where my bass fishing started. I fished my first tournament with him on Rainy Lake when I was 13. So yeah, that was my first one. That was the intro. We got second. And yeah, the rest is history. Like, I was addicted from that day forward. Any opportunity I got, I jumped on it. And like, from when I was 16 on, like, you know, me and a buddy at high school would pool our money together. Like, mom would give us lunch money, and we'd pull it together and be like, all right, you know, we got enough to fish this Thursday night or next week. Let's do it.
Right.
And like, we started there. And yeah, I kind of self-taught a little bit, but I grew up in a region like the Brainerd area that had a lot of really good anglers. Then I looked up to them, and like, you know, I tried pretty hard. Like, we spent a lot of time on the water, 6-7 days a week, like after school, weekends, all the time, right?
Yep.
And like, you just built these relationships with those guys, and like, eventually they take you under their wing a little bit. Like, hey, let's come out with me today. Like, we'll go try this or show you this, and it kind of just blossomed. But I was like, you know, central part of the state, had a ton of tournament opportunities, and I just dove headfirst in and went after it and got my butt kicked for a real long time.
Don't we all, man? That's how we all get started. It's
you learn the most, right? Like, it was super fun. Like, frustrating, right? Like, days I'd come home and just not want to talk to anybody, but that's that's what drives you to be better. And the fact that everybody around us, like, there's a lot of pretty good anglers, and it just drove us all to get pretty good and competitive, and it got really fun having that crowd, you know?
Who was the guy, like, up there when you first got started? Like, who were some of those guys that were just taking lunch money? Like, at that you look, I can think of names like in my area around here, Nick Gross, Pat Martin, got Tony Hatton.
Sure.
Guys like that around here, when I was coming up. And I'm probably forgetting a bunch of names. Chris Blank, Jeremy Strand. I mean, more guys than I can count, right? But I came in a little late where I started fishing against that area when I was a little bit older. So I'm just, who's the guy that you were scared of at the ramp? Was it Tuma at the time?
No, it wasn't.
Fuck you, Tuma.
Tuma and I really didn't cross paths early on much.
Sure.
Like I kind of ran into him maybe more 4 or 5 years into it.
Sure.
It's kind of where we would maybe see each other a little bit more. But yeah, those first few years, like it was pretty small local level, so it wasn't real big. So like the big names were like the Jim Smiths, the Tom Whiteheads, Brandon Cizik was starting to come on a little bit.
Sure.
But those were like the big ones. Maybe Steve Quinn for a while there. He was doing really well. Ron Lindner, of course, all the Lindners when they show up, like James. But those were like the ones that were like the super local, like that were more known maybe, that did stuff as well. Like there was tons of other guys that were really good, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But like you never really heard of them. Or maybe Dale Ruling. That's another good one that I just forgot. But yeah, Dale was like,
I fished against Dale. He's a hell of an angler.
Oh man, Dale's great. Yeah. So there was a bunch of really good guys when I just got started, and for me it was probably Jim Smith and Tom Whitehead. Like they were probably the two, and they like to fish the way I like to fish the most. Like they're shallow fishermen, power fishermen. So like for me, I was like, oh, these guys, like, I saw them fish in the same areas a lot that I was fishing, and they would beat me all the time. So I was like, oh, these guys are great, right?
Right.
And you learn things, and you're like, oh, they're just really good at that stuff. Like they're really good, but.
Sure.
Anyways, so like, there's those guys. And then as I got to like that next level, it was like maybe your Jim Seversons, and the Capper came up a lot, and Leiferman was there. And when Fighter came around, he was scary always. And that was kind of the people that on maybe the slightly larger scene that I would say were maybe a little bit more known.
Sure.
But yeah, like it's tough to say though, because you got those local guys that just maybe were a thorn in your side forever, and maybe they never fished a bunch of tournaments that people know about, but like, man, you go to Gull Lake and you don't want this guy there,
right?
You know. So there's a bunch of that too.
Absolutely. So what lakes? So Rainy, when did you kind of start fishing those tournaments? Because I got started with the Junior Bass Masters. And I forgot to mention Sean Haig, Mike Heinen, and Doug Petrak, because those were kind of the main three guys who got me into it. But like, was it Junior Bassmaster stuff, or was it more so like straight up club stuff, like Bass
So
Nation
the first
club
one
stuff?
was it was on Rainy Lake. It was just a small like 30 boat tournament.
Shit. Yep.
It was like Woody's Guide Service, which is a guide service out of the West End on Rainier, had this tournament that they did every year, and it was small, like really small, but I was 12 or 13, so 2000-ish, around then, maybe a little bit after, but so it was like a 30 boat money tournament. First place got like a couple $100. It was not much, it was like your typical Wednesday nighter, right, or Tuesday nighter. It was like that type of a deal, but it was a 6-hour tournament on Rainy. But after that, I fished a club for a year. I didn't like being in the back of the boat. I probably should have done it longer looking back, because I learned a lot. But, you just get some of those experiences with people that maybe are a little less friendly than what you'd prefer. And I was like, I'd rather choose who I get to fish with. Kind of had the same experience in guiding. I did that like a couple of times, and I was like, I'd much rather choose who I get to fish with and not go down this route, because I love it so much. Like it is my favorite thing in the world, and I just don't want to ruin it at all.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Where you had some bad, so like a club deal where you were the non-boater.
Correct. Yeah.
So you had some bad experiences early on?
Yeah, some pretty tough ones. Guys were just sore losers. Like if you start catching them out of the back, and they just like they couldn't handle it, and they'd be mean to you. I was like 15 and 16. Like it wasn't very fun.
No.
Having grown adults like be pissed. Yeah, it was no good.
Yeah, it's almost like you turn them into 14-year-olds from the sounds.
Yeah, a little bit. Like I don't know. So it was interesting.
14-year-old girls.
But then to say like, there was also 5-6 guys that I got to fish with that were awesome, and I would love to fish with again. So
right.
I let the bad experiences taint me, and I think if I could go back, I would probably do something different. Like I probably would have kept fishing it, because I learned a ton.
Absolutely.
Really. So
yeah. It's always weird fishing against somebody in the same boat, right?
It's something else, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it ever. And I guess when I've really enjoyed fishing out of the back was when they had those Silverados, and me and the boater were fishing as a team. So when I started catching him, he wasn't pissed. You know what I mean? Like, total different dynamic. But we fished that deal up in Brainerd this year, and I definitely noticed something about, like, I've heard this about the clubs up there. There's such good camaraderie up in Brainerd, man. So I want to, like, give a shout out to Brainerd, dude. Like, shit.
Truly
you guys
blessed.
are all real tight, and everybody's real nice at weighing, talking to everybody, hanging out. It was refreshing to see, to be honest with you.
To grow up around that crowd, because it's like the same group of people that's just kind of growing up together. There's new additions, some leave and some join all the time, but that same core group of people has been since I've started, like 2006. And yeah, it's great guys, ton of really good competitors, but like at the end of the day, we're just there to have a good time, and you can see it on everybody's face. And it's like every event that's thrown, whether it's 5 boats or 25 that shows up, like, it's really fun.
Absolutely, man. And you can tell just it's a different feel when you go fish those events. Just everybody is, I don't know if there's like this invisible line in Minnesota where, like, if you cross it, everybody's like, nobody can be pissed at you. But it's like, I don't know. Or maybe there's like a line up by Rainey where, like, now you're dealing with, like, serial killers. So, like, there's, like, this in-between line of really nice people in the Brainerd area. Then you get past, like, Hibbing, and it's, like, might stab you.
You don't know what you're going to get?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not mining iron as much anymore, all kinds of stuff.
They're bored.
Is that what it is?
There's just so much less to do at that far north that, like, yeah, they're stir crazy.
There is. Yeah, for sure.
Like, I was living borderline up there for a while, and yeah, there gets to be a couple points in time of the year that you're like, man, I wish I could, like, do anything right now. It's negative 35 for the 8th day in a row.
Right.
Right. 3 feet deep snow. Like, no, I'm good sitting here, I guess, again.
No shit.
Yeah. So I feel for all those people up there.
Yeah, dude, isn't there, like, a movie about people dying up there? Like, with the ore pits and, like, a conspiracy of, like...
I have no idea, man.
Didn't the Coen brothers... Oh, Fargo?
Fargo, that's in Brainerd.
Oh, yeah. We were just talking about Brainerd not being weird, so it's probably weird, too.
Yeah, well, growing
weird
up
everywhere.
there, like, that was a big deal. Fargo mentioned our town name in the movie, right?
They did, yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was a good movie, I thought.
It was all right,
It's an acquired taste.
Right? Yeah. Like... The jokes were hilarious being from Minnesota because, like, like you can hear, right, like you got the extremes. You totally experience it every day. So the jokes for us were pretty good.
Just thick accents.
Real good, yeah.
Like, hey, Bill, I got the hot dish over here. I'm going to run uptown later.
Yeah.
It's like, are you Irish or Minnesotan? I don't even know. It's thick, though. It's thick. But probably my favorite part about talking to you alls is we have, like, kind of different styles and different outlooks, yet very similar. And I would say that your strengths are very maybe complementary to mine in the sense of, like, you're very good shallow water angler. You're very good just fisherman in general. You can do anything, but I'd say, like, our strengths are almost opposite.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, fishing... Again, back to the club thing and fishing with different people. Fishing with you has been fun because just like the other day, I'm pretty sure I caught a bass deeper than I've ever caught before when we were out together. Like the first fish I caught of the day, I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know they lived out here, right?
Yeah.
So like just eyes are open. You get these different experiences. But yeah, I would agree. We do a lot of similar styles of fishing in completely different areas.
Yeah, and to me, I feel like that's why what kind of people could take away from is, like, yeah, it's easy to just agree with somebody on everything, but, like, I feel like if we went to a lake tomorrow, we would do very different things and probably get very similar results, potentially.
Yeah.
Or one or the other is going to be better for the day.
Yeah,
right?
I would agree. Yeah, it seems pretty consistent that way. Yeah, like I think we've spent a day shallow and a day deep for the most part.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, both fit in and we're able to do it no problem. And
I think you were up 3-0 on me. Fucking.
I think it was
fishing
the
deep
same
that
shallow
morning.
the morning we went
Yeah,
shallow.
like-
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the same thing
You're
happened
just
the
a
other
good
way.
guide.
But same, right? So anyways, yeah, I think what I was really intrigued by was the fact that I brought the same rods. I tied basically the same stuff on, maybe a little bit heavier. But I did the same things I would have done where I would have went to first when I was with you. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Like I had the same presentations on, maybe different weight,
Right.
but I was doing the same type of stuff that I would typically do.
Right. Right.
Like it wasn't crazy. I wasn't like, oh man, this is super foreign, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I would agree. Very similar style, but do it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, dude. And I think it's kind of where we've talked about it before, but it's kind of where we come from. Like you come from
Yeah.
the North Country.
Yeah, where they live shallow, you know, or more. There's enough shallow ones year round that you can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess I don't know what I come from kind of this weird, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's not North Country, but it's a mix of
It's
North
the
Country.
in-between land.
It
man.
is in between land.
You
which
get
I'm
a little
blessed
bit of
for that.
both. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm an okay offshore angler, an okay shallow angler maybe, but talk to me a little bit about that style because you've won a boat, you've won some stuff north, you've won stuff in a lot of places. You went to Florida and almost made it to the Classic, like
Yeah. Yeah. And like pretty much everything, like thinking about it, how it's been done, it's all been done with my eyes. Yeah. Yeah. That's my style. Like it's like pretty much everything you can visually see.
that's how you roll.
Pretty much. And I'm thinking back like why that might be. And like, I just never been patient enough to let my stuff sink that long, you know? Like I feel like I can get it done, let it sink for half a second up shallow. I'll do it that way.
I've done all my damage fishing shit you can't see.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like,
There's the outside place where maybe 8-9 foot where I can see the tops of the weeds, or maybe you can't see bottom, but I really don't wander much. I don't think
there
I've
was
had
a
any success
27
deeper than
pound
that.
bag. I think that was probably a little deeper.
It was 8 feet, 9 feet, 6
Yeah,
feet.
you couldn't see them.
I couldn't see the fish, no. But it was still like I could touch my rod most places to the bottom.
Right, right. Well, why is that? Like, is that just you just haven't because you're one to definitely play around with stuff too. So like,
Yeah, it's
does it just bail you out all the time?
It has. And I think just a lot of my early success came that way. I can think back to the first couple times that, like I won maybe like some slightly bigger tournaments, you know, with Kyle Wood back like 2010. And our first year, the best success that we had that we could actually repeat, like we'd go fish weed lines in practice and he'd catch a big one here and catch a big one there. And like, you know, we do okay. Never did good in a tournament really. And we started fishing shallow, and we would visually lay eyes the day before on fish. And for an entire 2 years, we'd go back the next day, and they were right there. And they bit on the first cast.
Did you catch them in practice?
No.
Okay, so
Just
you
looked at them.
Okay.
Visually saw them. And we got really like quick at being able to pick out this cover that these big ones, isolated big ones, would be sitting in. So then kind of just stemmed from there of how to maybe do that slightly deeper and slightly deeper. So now I just kind of stay in that less than 12-foot range and look for isolated stuff I think big ones will sit in.
I think that isolated thing's a big deal, but like going up to see fish, I mean, it sounds easy, but it's not.
No, well,
Like what?
Northern Minnesota too. Like we're talking pretty clear lakes.
Yep.
Most of these lakes I can see bottom. Like all of them, all those guys can see 6 feet deep. So like you go up to a dock in 3 feet. If the sun is shining, you know, on Cass Lake, you can come from the side and look under there and see them.
Would you throw something to maybe get them to move to help
No.
see them easier? No.
No, you don't need to. And if you did, you throw it 4 or 5 feet outside of the dock because these things were so dumb on some of these lakes that they would just swim out to it. And you're like, okay, that's like a 5. And you reel it in, you go to the next one.
Were other people doing that?
You know, some of them were, a lot of guys were catching them. So like, you know, on some of those lakes, like there weren't a lot of bass. So after a couple of years, like it got pretty tough, pretty fast doing that. But then
Yeah.
it was more that real isolated kind of off the beaten path. Same kind of concept, but nowhere near a dock, you know? Like something that's you're really going to have to stumble onto to find.
Yeah.
That's what it turned into very quickly, right? But
Sure.
it started like because some of these like Cass Lake, I was able to experience some of the first tournaments that were held on the lake that I'm aware of, right? Like at least in this era. So yeah, like in 2010, about I think was like one of the first ones that I know of that went there. And yeah, so like I kind of got to watch that lake progress with a bunch of big stupid ones that never had seen a hook. Like they saw frogs and crayfish and bluegills. Like that's what they saw. So like they were really easy to catch. It was super fun. And a lot of those lakes in that region were that way. But that's kind of how I built confidence in being able to do that because of the repeatability was so much easier for us. We found success in it. Like much easier than on the weed line. Like there were some hero and zero moments out there where you'd show up and the school was firing and you caught them. But with the technology that we had and the amount of time we had doing it, being able to see them and go back and see if they were physically there again or not was so much quicker. And I didn't waste any time in the tournament day. Like we would just be burning water, just covering water, showing like, you know, that's what we did in practice. Like we just covered as much as possible shallow and like, all right, well, these 7 sections of the lake all had fish that saw some nice ones. Let's just go do that again.
Did you outboard it or would you troll motor on high?
Troll motor on high typically.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I've been with James where he'll do the outboarding gear and trolling motor on high.
I've missed a lot doing that, you know.
I could see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You like the boat, for instance, on Pekegama, like I sucked that whole first half of the day. Like
when you won the boat?
Yep.
What year was it? This was 2019, 2020?
Like 17, maybe
2017.
18. It was
like the first
year of the Champions Tour. Yeah, it was the first year.
You won the first boat?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the first half of the day just stunk and like whatever, but I reverted back to like I had one spot in practice that I kind of troll motored through and I saw like 3 or 4 of them on an inside weed line. And that's kind of like what me and Kyle used to do, right? Like, and I just went there. I was like, I know there's some bass swimming around, like at least to be able to catch a couple because today sucks. And I went there and I was like, oh man, like they're actually kind of biting. And I didn't think they were biting that day. And I just ran with that pattern, like just
around the lake.
Well, no, I just kept the trolling motor in the water and I just
down
went.
the weed line.
Yeah, for that till my trolling motor died. I just went.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, why didn't you do that right away, or what did you have going in practice? And I guess what do you think changed?
Well, that, you know, catching a mid-range and on top of stuff. Like I was fishing for fish chasing bait, like big schools of them. Yeah. And it just went away. Like it was not happening at all. The cloudy and windy and like the wind, sometimes you can get it to happen when it's cloudy out there, but like they weren't up, you know, like
Dude,
they were probably chasing
changes.
bait, but out, right?
That lake changes day to day. We've talked about that.
Yep.
I've got a bone to pick with that lake.
So all the fish that I was catching deeper than 12 feet, I couldn't get to bite. Like whether they were there or not, I don't have live scope. Like I don't know if they were there or not. I assume they were, right? But I couldn't get anything to bite. I caught a couple of bass, but not much. So at the end of that first period, I just went up to some pads up on the way north end that I caught a steep break, and I flipped in there and lost like a 5-pounder or something, like a pretty darn nice one, and then flipped in there again and lost like a 2 3/4 back to back. I was like, okay. So we went back in for break, re-rigged everything. I was like, I'm just gonna go fish shallow, like with a wacky worm or something all day, because I lost those 2 in a row flipping, and I was like, they're not getting it very good.
And you didn't have enough going on your other deal to make it worth staying on that, right?
Well, it was the lake split. So, like, half change. So, like, I wasn't going to go flip more pads up there. Like, I could have done it maybe somewhere else, but I was like, I know where there's some bass shallow. I've just had some bite shallow. Like, there's still some bass shallow biting. So, I'm going to go to where I saw some. I'm going to throw something finesse at them. Like, it's shallow, it's Champions Tour. I just need to catch them.
Right.
And that's what I did. I just went to where I saw bass and had confidence. And I just always revert to that type of style of fishing of where, like, I think it's just easier for me to say yes or no. Like, I can see these fish on live scope. Maybe they're bass. Maybe they're not. Maybe I can't catch them for 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
I can go shallow, and I'm like, that's a bass. I can see it, right? And that's just kind of what I've reverted to. It's my comfort zone, for sure. But that's probably growing up fishing off a dock for the first, 15 years of my life,
right.
You know? You can see everything.
No shit. Well, we've talked a lot about the mental aspect, and I've actually brought this up the last few podcasts with both like Bob Downey and Patch Lapper, and like Bob Downey's year when he made the Elite Series through the Opens, that kind of carefree mindset, and that was the second time somebody had really kind of said it. You were the first though, and I guess You told me there was a few light bulb moments you had tournament fishing where I can't remember if the day was going bad. If we're talking about the boat day,
That's one of them. Yeah,
or
for sure.
Gull, I think there was a tournament on Gull. And I guess the mental aspect of fishing, we were talking about it at one point. There's so many good anglers, right?
Yeah.
And really, what separates them isn't necessarily that guy's ability to throw a bait caster. It's what's between your ears.
You can only get so good at casting and reeling, right?
Right.
Like you can only be so good at that, and this really comes down to decision making. And that I honestly think that's the part of the game that is the most fun. Like
Agreed.
That's what the part I love.
The puzzle, baby.
Yeah, and time management, right? And so for me, I think that's why I just go to that shallow thing, is because it's easy for me. Like I can see it, it's quick, it's fast, decisive. Like if you stroll through a pencil reed patch, like, oh, I didn't see one in here, keep going, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of like how I go to there. And like as far as the mindset goes, like I just like certainly going to those easy things when things are tough, like that's part of, having that like mindset of trying to win, but not caring of when you fail, I think gives you a lot more of the ability to go experiment and try those things. Like
how do you do that though?
The best way I was able to do it was like,
care, but I care.
I was like, at least like for me, the brass tacks down was like, I'm not working, I'm fishing. I might lose, but at least I'm not working. I'm fishing for the rest of this afternoon. Like,
yeah.
The worst case scenario, like I lose. Okay. Like that's already happening, right? Like that. That's why you're trying to scramble and do something different. So it's like, well, who cares? Like, it really doesn't matter if I win or lose this tournament. Like nothing life-altering is going to happen. So like if I can let that go and just think clearly and freely, man, I make the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah.
Because I'm just out there trying to get another bite all the time. And it's like, when I'm not worried about winning, all I'm is like, man, I just need another bite. I just want to catch one. Where am I going to get another one at? That's all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about like, man, I'm losing. All I'm thinking about is where could I cast to catch another one? Like that was fun. That last one I caught. Let's do that again.
Yeah. Well, to take things like to a deeper level, there is like we were talking about like energy and like
certainly
positive reinforcement to yourself and like that sort of thing. And I don't think people talk about that much.
The witchcraft of it all.
The voodoo, man. Like Salem witch trials. Let's get this going, baby.
Firm believer.
It's a witch.
I'm a firm believer. And just putting your intentions out there. I wasn't. I thought it was foolish and stupid. I did it as a joke, and
Wingardium Leviosa.
Like, no joke. I've seen results.
That's what I thought.
I've seen results. And I would assume it's probably more of a mentality, confidence, positivity, just brewing those positive thoughts and not letting yourself get to that negative place that doesn't let you think the way you're supposed to.
Right.
But for me, like the positive intentions are good, and I do that all the time, and I try to, like envision things and visualize like what maybe could happen and visualize winning a tournament if it's something I really want to do. Like certainly I've tried that stuff and certainly I've had success doing it. Whether it works every time or not, I have no idea. But I'm going to try it if it's maybe going to give me a leg up on somebody. Like, sure, I'll meditate. I have no problem doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right? So, but yeah, like...
like those weird fucking...
Aren't those things like...
I don't even fucking
big
know.
Dish? I don't know.
It's a dish? I thought it was like this bong-looking thing made of bamboo. And then
sorry, I couldn't tell with your sound effect. It sounded maybe a little different.
Yeah, dude, my turkey call's even worse, like, straight up. So, are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. They have a wide variety of home loan programs in their tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. Just ask me. I trusted Aaron Dagas, a bass fisherman just like you and me, and Supreme Lending's Dream Team to help finance my first home. Contact Aaron Dagus and the Dream Team today by scanning the QR code or giving them a call at 763-326-0677. That's 763-326-0677. Did I catch a 7 in there? Or visit their website, aarondagus.supremelending.com. That's AARONDAEGES.supremelending.com. As anglers, we develop special bonds with our equipment. There's something magical when you find that perfect jig rod and reel combo for a technique that elevates your confidence on the water. Whether it's a perfectly balanced, crisp, and sensitive jig rod that gives you the highest level of control over your bait, allows you to feel every grain of sand, every bite, and allows you to drive that hook clean, or a rod with the perfect action and taper that seems to keep your chatterbait, swim bait, or whatever it is in the back of the bass's head where it belongs no matter where you throw it, or a rod that allows you to effortlessly cast a lighter bait you used to cuss at on your old combo. These types of magical bonds are rare to find in a mass-produced sweatshop, which is why Veselka Fishing and Customs came to existence, with the sole purpose of bringing you closer to your passion by enhancing the bond with you, your rod, and the bass. Confidence is everything in bass fishing, and there's no bigger boner buster than losing a big fish, not feeling like you can present your bait correctly. The list goes on and on. Mr. Veselka is a full-blown artesian craftsman who can build you the perfect rod, no matter the size or action, custom, exactly the way you want it. He also has a wide variety to choose from right on his website, including fan favorites like the 8-foot hair jig rod, the drop shot rod, swim bait rod, the chatter chicken rod, the MH workhorse, and more. Even ice fishing. You do the whole frozen Swiss cheese thing, the ice fishing. Seen grumpy old men? Well, you can send that jiggle stick back to the antique store because Mr. Veselka builds custom ice rods in all sizes and actions too. So head on over to his website, veselkafishing.com. That's VOCELKA fishing.com. To enhance your confidence on the water, feel your passion, and catch more bass, baby. But imagination to me is probably the most powerful thing that's been robbed from most childhoods nowadays. Like it's your phone takes away from that everything, but like immersing yourself in nature and like I like to imagine myself at a Lynyrd Skynyrd concert. I'm hammered drunk. No. I like to imagine how I would fish a spot in different weather conditions. We've talked about that before.
Sure, yeah.
You like to imagine this is how I'm going to catch. You like to imagine literally down to the moment of the 5-pounder, I think. The way we've talked about it.
Yeah, like I'm a little more pushy. Like this is what I want it to be, so that's what I'm trying to imagine, you know? So
yeah.
like for sure, like when I'm putting those out, like it's a certain direction. I'm open to anything different, right? But yeah, I'm pretty specific with it for sure.
Sure.
Yep.
I'm learning.
Like buzzbait today, you know, like that's some days like today's gonna be a buzzbait
every day for you, dude.
Well, that's my hopes, like deep down. Like I just hope they want to bite it today, but there's certainly been some tournaments where I'm like, I'm gonna make them eat this.
I feel like you throw a buzzbait more than anybody, and people's minds are going to be blown when they hear the degrees Fahrenheit that you throw that fucking buzzbait. And I feel like you could talk about it and people still won't have
I have no problem with that
the confidence to throw it for more than 5 casts.
Most people, I think, are missing probably 60 days of buzzbait season at least,
You're
if not
fucking
more.
Wild, man.
Yeah, no
What's
joke.
the coldest you've fucked them up on a buzzbait?
Like actually done really good 45.
45
like, really
degrees.
Good. Yeah.
On a buzzer.
Yeah, and honestly, like 40. If it's going the 45, if it's rising temperatures like in the spring, it's even better.
With a toad, Andy?
Sure. Yeah.
With a fucking toad?
Yeah, man.
Sweet mother of Jesus.
Yeah, the buzzbait's a really fun one.
Why? Why do they eat that?
What's interesting
Why
is
do they eat that when it's cold, dude? I do not catch the movingest bait I'll catch them on is like a chatterwagon or like a swimmer.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the fall. I would assume it's the frog thing, right? Just frogs migrating. They're just eating stuff. Like they're pretty upset.
So is it like it's? I think about those shallower lakes, them shallower bays. They do cool off quicker, just like they warm up quicker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that shallow bay might be 45, but is the main lake like 45, or is it?
Sometimes. In the spring, usually the main lake's colder.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
usually, I mean, typically the bay is going to warm up faster. In the fall, the bay will usually be colder than the main lake. So in the fall, like maybe it's a time of day deal.
do you think they live there still?
Yeah. Dude, like, so I think that's maybe part of the fall fishing and this cold water thing.
I want you to come into my backyard like next October and like we'll take a paddle boat out and you show me some shit because I don't believe you. That's like wild to me.
Yeah, I built a lot of confidence ice fishing. Being up from the north and like you go cut a hole in the ice in February and like the bass are swimming around on the edge of the pencil reeds. It's like that's where they're at. So it's like, oh well,
How
they
deep?
really
Like
don't
4 foot?
Yeah, 3-4 foot. They don't care.
All winter.
Yeah. Yeah. When the timing's right and they're feeding, that's where they are. So like all fall you can catch them on those spots. So like I've spent enough time sight fishing through the ice hole being like, it's just timing. That's really all fall comes down to.
I've noticed that with windows and stuff and like especially with smallmouth, and we were talking about this I think the other week, like it seems like on some of these smallmouth lakes where they winter and stuff, there's a morning window, and it's like that makes no sense if we're talking about largemouth, really, right?
No, there certainly is still.
There is still?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've noticed that, and you'd think like wait till the sun comes up and warms the fucking water up. I don't know.
No, it's like what's weird is as the water gets colder and decreasingly colder, basically you can take a bass acts like every other predator fish, like a walleye. Let's say a walleye, for instance. Mm-hmm. As the water gets cold, they act like a walleye with feeding windows. Like they can eat all day, so can a walleye. But they are going to eat when the feeding window is prime on that day.
Yep.
Like they don't, for whatever reason, their metabolism slows down. Like they don't have to do it. So it's harder to trigger that reaction out of them. When you get to these windows, it's easy to trigger that reaction. So like the colder it gets, the more fish act like, let's just say a walleye, for instance, because everyone can relate to that, or everyone from the Midwest at least.
Right.
So yeah, like that's more or less what happens, I think, to a lot of fish species as we move into winter.
I agree, man. And I've noticed there's definitely bite windows, and they get like more significantly bite windowy.
Yep.
The colder it gets, right? And I've figured out those windows, but only from trial and error and going to the lakes. And I've talked to guys like musky guys, Matt Thompson, whoever, and they would tell you they look at the moon phases and whatnot, and that, in their opinion, bite windows are predictable. And I guess
I would agree a little bit.
Do you think? Yeah. So like these cold water bite windows, I guess, is that 75% predictable before you get to the lake, in your opinion, or do you
50.
need to go to the lake?
50.
Okay.
Yeah. Half
me,
the
that
time
makes
it's
more sense
pretty
to
good.
me.
The mornings pretty much it's very consistent. The evenings very consistent. That's
For
all
largemouth.
winter, both species.
See, I don't catch smallies in the fall within an hour of dark, really that good. You'll catch a couple like before the last half hour, and then that last half hour, maybe they move up.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe
right?
I'm fished too deep.
Yeah. But they're like, if you can get around them, I strongly believe like they'll bite until dark almost.
Oh, I'm around them. I can't get them to bite.
Super weird.
So
I'm a largemouth fisherman, so like maybe it doesn't.
And I'm
correlate
talking
to all
wintering smallmouth, fall
Yeah.
wintering smallmouth. You're talking fall wintering largemouth. But and maybe it's just this lake. It could be the lake. But I don't know. I'm curious. Do you go to a lake and like your fall experience this fall? Because what I do, I don't look at the moon enough. Like I don't predetermine when they're going to bite. I just know, hey, they've been biting in the morning a little bit better, so we should get there as early as possible. Like,
So we were texting a little this fall, and I had a school going on Minnetonka, and I went out there and caught them pretty good the first time and kind of realized there was a school there. So the second time I went, I purposely went back a half hour before moonrise. Put my boat in, got over there. I was there 20 minutes before moonrise. And I fished that for an hour, and I never had a bite. I left, fished a few other spots, came back 2 hours later, 30 minutes before sunset, and I caught I think I caught a dozen that night in that exact same spot.
did you
Fished
have
at
live scope?
moonrise? Oh, yeah.
What did it look different?
No, it's thick grass.
Sure.
Thick.
They're just in it.
Yeah. Yeah, bait was there both times. Like, everything else looked the same.
They just didn't bite.
Didn't catch one the first time I was there. And that was at moonrise. So I'm like,
And see-
maybe that isn't everything, right? But I do
I've
believe that
definitely
does make a
experienced
difference.
that it's not everything. Like, I'm like, Matt Thompson, I want to believe you, but like, I ain't catching them right now, and I feel like I should be catching them right now.
Yep, I've seen that. So, and I haven't played with the moon enough with schools of bass. I've had it
Maybe
work.
there's a moon spot. Maybe they go to this spot when the moon's there, and I'm like, well, I catch them like all the other 8 hours of the day or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know the answer there, but that I do know that this fall I got burned on it, and I was really like, I planned my day to get there. It was a Saturday. I was like, I'm gonna get there. It's gonna be perfect. Like, I'm gonna have 30 minutes of just a beat down, and I know where these fish are.
Right.
I'm so disappointed,
Dude.
and I did expect to catch one when I came back later, and I caught like a dozen. So then I felt like a terrible fisherman earlier. I was like, what did I do wrong?
I know, we feel so shitty,
Yeah.
right? When we don't. But then it's like you take somebody who doesn't like do that, and it's like epic for like
Oh yeah,
we are so blinded now. Like, it's like but yet we still suck tomorrow or whatever. But like, for those people who are maybe wanting to like figure out how to make better decisions on the water, figuring out, how to look for their pattern. Like, to me, that's like, I think about like my dad didn't fish, dude. Like, I had to put a lot of time in on the
Yeah.
water, do a lot of research. Like, we had to work hard. I know you're the same way. Your
yeah.
grandpa took you, my grandpa took me. Like, and I know there's a bunch of people out there who just love the sport and just want to learn more. And I guess, to me, that decision making on the water is the magic piece to the puzzle.
yeah.
You don't need anybody to teach you how to cast. You can learn all of those things on your own. Even decision making you can learn on your own, but that's where fishing with people can make that a lot faster from
Certainly.
my experience.
Yeah, like if you fish with people, you can, you can just tell, be like, well, man, this was way better than when I go do it. Like, I need to improve to be able to do that good, right?
Right.
Like, I think you and I both learned to fish in tournaments, and like, well, you come into weigh and you're like, man, we got 13 pounds. We did pretty good, It's like first weigh in, and you're like,
Yeah,
got like a 2 3/4 in there. You're pumped. You're like, yes,
Remember
we got
that.
5 of them. And then all of a sudden you're like, 13 sucks. Okay.
Yep,
Like, that is not good. Let's try that again. I got to look at something completely different. Like, that is not enough. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And that's how I learned of like
Same,
of
dude.
what to look for, just getting my butt kicked.
Same, dude.
Yeah. And like, everything went according to plan. You're like, we got 13 and a half,
I knew it.
Yeah. Then you show up and you're like, let's just leave them in the live well.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is how this works. Okay, this is okay.
Oh, 20's good here. Okay, got it.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this isn't the same as the other lake that I saw that 13 pounds was good.
Yeah.
Okay, this lake's different than this lake. Okay.
That's where classic bass came in for me. That's
Yeah.
like, I would be like, all right, man. Because that was the first time because I fished like the Thursday night leagues around Brainerd, and I fished a club. And the competition is the step down, right? And the first tournament that I really jumped into was, they called it the Skeeter tournament. It was 1 day on gull, 1 day on whitefish. And they gave away a Skeeter boat for first place. Like, it was a pretty good tournament. And
How old were you?
16.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was fishing with my 15-year-old buddy.
So,
So,
Hell
yeah.
Sounds like Teal and Shirley back in the day.
Right?
Love it.
Like, we saved up all of our pennies to get into that thing, and we did it. And, like, we didn't have a great day, but, like, I jumped off like a 4-pounder, like, not something you should be proud of, but like had a bite of a fish that caliber, had a couple over 3
Yep.
on whitefish, and we're like,
On whitefish, that's beautiful.
yeah, like back in the day, and like we got like almost a 3-pound average, like, and we could have had over that, like
Good whitefish bag when you were
right?
16, especially.
and then got our butts kicked, and we're like, huh, okay, so like that was our best day, right? And we learned how to maybe do that again and maybe duplicate that again, but now we have to be able to build from that. So it's like, well, we got that. How can you add on top of that? Like, where can you cut out of your day? You know, and for
Yep.
me, it was getting beat to be able to kind of make those decisions and be able to do that on the water. Like, certainly I think sharing time in the boat with other people probably helps that and speeds that process up, like you were saying.
With certain techniques and getting confidence in them in certain situations, that's what's helped me a lot. I mean, I didn't invent every technique out there. Like, nobody can say
Yeah,
that
true.
they learned every technique on their own. Like, a lot of times, like, I won't adopt a new technique till a buddy whoops my ass with it. You know
Very
what I
true.
mean?
Same with me. I was thinking more on the time side of things.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah. Okay.
sure.
Yeah. Technique for sure. That all came from other people.
I mean, well, dude, I learned so much from other people, like time, decision making. Like, that was a big thing I learned from, like, I mean, so many different guys. Doug Petrak was like a really monumental guy early on. And then I fished some tournaments with Nick Gross, and I always thought on a different level, like, than other people I had fished with. So I would say that I progressed the most as an angler when I fished with Nick Gross, you know,
Yeah.
who's my neighbor now.
Okay.
And he's out of the game. So it's funny because we went fishing again, and it's like just getting back in the boat together. But
Yep.
I mean, I forget where we were going with this, but I know where we were going with this. But anyway, it's funny though, because he taught me so much, and then I would teach him stuff, because you each learn stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody learns something out on the water, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I forget where we were going with that, but you maybe remember. I don't know.
I didn't know where you were going with it, but
We were talking about the mentality and
Yeah, well,
learning
yeah.
how to be a better decision maker, and like what you learn in the boat by yourself versus like other people. That's right. That's what we were talking
yeah,
about.
and you were talking about like maybe the time of learning about how to make time decisions with other people, and
Yes.
you were going somewhere. I don't.
Well, I mean, decision making is something that nobody ever has 100% figured out, right?
Never.
And the perception is from people who feel they make only bad decisions or are way off, or, you know, us when we were 15, those
yeah.
guys who won all the time, we didn't think they made bad decisions. We thought they pulled up and caught them all the time.
They had to make bad ones to even get where they're at, right? A whole lot
Exactly.
more at one point. Yeah.
Exactly. Some of them would make just more in one day
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get to the right one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I use that one to my advantage, maybe more so than others.
you move around a little more.
Yeah, or just keep the trolling motor down but put it on high.
And see, if you're an angler looking to become better, it's tough, right? Because if you're talking to me, I'm going to tell you to take your trolling motor off high and put it on 3 if you want to be successful.
Yeah.
But then you talk to Andy Walls, and he's like, dude, you got to run more water.
But then
you need to put your trolling motor on 7. And for a person learning the sport, learning the game, that can be a bit confusing, because now you're in a tournament situation, and what does your panicked self do? Do you put the trolling motor on 3 or do you put it on 7? For me, putting the trolling motor on 3, and when things were going bad, slowing down more would yield better results. For example,
I've seen both, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen both too.
Yeah.
I've seen both too.
I always went fast, but again, we go back to like our style differences.
Yeah.
Going with the motor on 80% in 3 feet of water is a lot easier than it is in 23 feet of water.
Totally.
You know?
Yup.
So there might be something to where I'm spending my time with it on 80% as well.
Dude, that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, that to me, I just wonder how many people struggle with it, because I was taught it. So it was easy after that, but I just wonder how shitty I would have been offshore if I wouldn't have been taught this one thing, and that's hey, you're in 20 feet of water. Takes a lot longer for your jig to hit the bottom. So, like, make sure it hits the bottom.
Yeah.
And also, when you pull your jig in 20 feet of water, you're pulling it twice as far as you were pulling it when it was 3 feet of water. So you need a little more slack in your line. Like, it's like I'm so thankful for guys like Doug Petrak who taught me those things, because to me, if you're fishing in 20 feet of water, you cannot cover as much water as fishing 3 feet of water. Not even close.
Not with those same techniques, no.
No.
Right? Yeah.
No. And I've seen it. There's a lot of people that'll put the boat in 20 foot of water, and I'll watch their jig fall, and I'll watch them freaking click it before it even hits the bottom. And it's such a natural thing to do if you're not used to fishing in 20 feet of water, though. So, once again, I don't know where we were going with that, but I love the rambles. I love the rambles. I'm a ramble and gamble man. So,
well, another thought to that. So, like, the depth, right? 20 feet of water, letting your jig fall, get down that far. So, like, I'm okay going out there, talk about how I always go shallow and do that thing. But one thing I did learn is kind of to your thing of not letting your jig hit the bottom out there is, like, and I just learned by having it just kick me in the butt so many times of, like, going by a spot too fast or too quick and just kind of making a half-hearted cast and not giving it that full effort and dedication that you should every cast, right?
Right.
And then that's when the fish that you really need bites. And, like, you're out of position, you're not paying attention. And I learned that, like, so many times the hard way. And now I won't make a cast. Like, if I make a cast, like, I'm going to look at my depth finder before I do. I'm going to know how deep that thing's got to sink. I'm going to think about it in my head before I make the cast about how far, like, how long the thing's going to sink before it hits bottom, right? Like, if I'm throwing a jig. So if it sinks for 2 seconds and I'm like, man, it should have been 5, I know there's probably one on it, right? I've had those things just nip me so many times that, like, if I don't focus, like, 90% of the day or better, like, I'll never do good. Like, I have to be at 99+% of focus, like, when it really matters, you know?
For sure. And I have the biggest ADD in the land. I mean, focus is a problem of mine. But if you get me bass fishing,
it's easy, right?
Hyper focus, baby. Like, it's all I think about. That's my kryptonite. But with every great angler I've talked to, there is that extra hyper focus or that extra obsession or that extra I'm going to call it an obsession, like
yeah, that seems right.
Maniac.
Obsession seems like about the perfect description of it.
Yeah, like, I went fishing with Hayden this past weekend, and I will tell you I'm the craziest motherfucker there is when it comes to bass fishing. And then I go fish with Hayden, and I'm like, dude, you are fucking crazy.
Next level.
Yeah. And then I did that one thing that I heard about from you, and I'm like, dude, Andy Walls is the craziest human I've ever seen for making this run. There's no way. And I didn't make the run, but, like, it takes a level of insanity, I think, if you want to be successful in the sport of bass fishing, that I think if you're not insane, but you, like, you got to be nuts, man. You got to be a fucking cuckoo clock.
A little bit,
yeah,
at least, right?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Like, I have a pretty sick obsession for catching those things. Like, that's about the best way to describe it. Like, it doesn't matter. I want to be out there all the time just looking for them.
Yes. Like, and that to me is the difference between the most hardcore anglers and the most successful anglers to me. They like the whole process of bass fishing, and they almost like finding the bass more than they like catching them. To me, if you want to be successful in bass fishing, you have to enjoy and want to find them more than you want to catch them.
I would say, like, it's super rewarding catching bass. It's super fun.
But then you find them, and then you have to figure out how to catch them.
When you find them, like, that process of, like, you can't find anything. It's really tough. It's really tough. And then all of a sudden, boom, like, there's that light switch.
Yes.
And you flick it, and you're like, oh, there's nothing better in that moment.
Dude, it's the greatest feeling in the
right.
world.
Yeah, when you just kind of
cracking
like,
a code.
Yeah.
Cracking a code, baby.
Yep. There's
Holy
nothing better.
shit. Yeah, dude. Like, when we were growing up, they had this game that was called Clue.
Yeah.
Crack the code. Shit was Bush League compared to that. And I think about these kids with these video games now. They're playing like, I don't even, I don't even pay attention to that anymore. I don't even know. But the bass fishing code is the most pure orgasm a man can have.
It's the most pure. Yeah, there's something about it. It's always been my happy place since I was a kid.
And there's so many people out there right now, I think, that think they love bass fishing. And I'm not calling anybody out, but I think like there's levels to the insanity that it requires. And I think that if you don't have that level of insanity, it's hard to understand the level of insanity that's required. For us, I already can't stop thinking about every single tournament for next year.
Yeah.
And every lake and the bite this weekend and trying to catch a December bass like there's nothing else.
Yep.
And I know you're not any different.
Correct, yeah. Yeah.
And I know Noah Schultz ain't any different, and I know Pat Schlapper ain't any different, and I know Bob Downey ain't any different, and I know Dane Veselka ain't any different, and I know...
Yeah, I mean...
There is so many of us that are that way.
Yeah. We all have the sickness, man.
We should be medicated.
Yes, we are.
But smallmouth movements, like you grew up on Rainy Lake.
Yeah.
And we've talked, and you've fished with a lot of really cool people. You've talked to a lot of really cool people. And to me, something that's super interesting, I have a huge passion for smallmouth, just like you have a huge hatred for smallmouth.
Yeah.
But I enjoy talking to you about smallmouth because you and Tuma have the biggest smallmouth bag I've ever seen weighed in the state of Minnesota for 5.
That was one lucky day. Yeah.
Well, either way.
I'll take it. Yeah.
I've noticed there's a difference in how you fish for smallmouth, kind of.
Sure.
Even just in the region here, right? You've got South Dakota. You've got central Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
You've got northern Minnesota. You've got kind of that Mille Lacs to Brainerd area. Then you've got north of that, which is Leech, Whitefish, Pokegama type.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Canadian Shield Lakes. You've got your rainy fish. You've got your what have yous. Then you've got some smelt lakes, some Cisco lakes. But then you get to the Great Lakes, and it's like a whole different beast.
Yep.
Then you go to Champlain. Then you go to Dale Hollow. It's a whole different ball game. And I don't even know about these California smallmouth. And I heard there's some smallmouth in Texas. But what I do know is that I thought I knew how to catch all of them. But until you go to that new type of smallmouth, Oahe.
Sure, yeah.
Until you go to that new Cherokee, until you go to that new different type of smallmouth water, it's like river, Mississippi River.
Yeah.
It's like they're smallmouth, but they're subject to the terrain and the forage
food, yeah.
and the water they live in. You know?
Yeah.
And to me, like, I've always just been fascinated by that. And to me, that's like the ultimate puzzle to figure out, is to be the best smallmouth angler on all those types of waters. I mean, you watch the Elite Series, you don't see that. You do not see Chris Johnston win on Oahe, St. Lawrence River, and St. Clair. You do not see Gussie win. You know what I mean? Like, there's a dominance factor to different types of smallmouth fishing.
Yeah.
And I've never really gotten like heavily into that, but I love smallmouth, and you hate smallmouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you fished with people who've probably fished more smallmouth water than I have, and fished potentially more. I don't know. I'd be curious what diverse smallmouth fisheries we fish. But to me, that's an interesting conversation, because I feel like you've got a pretty good pulse on it. Like if we're going to go over generic differences, and like, to me, there's more pelagic. To me, it can be separated by more pelagic and structure-oriented fisheries. And to me, that's kind of how I think about it, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, you fish Rainy Lake of the Woods. I fished Rainy River. I've fished a little bit of Lake of the Woods. And I fished Sturgeon Bay. And Sturgeon Bay was my most humbling smallmouth experience of my life, for sure.
Well, they can all be humbling, right?
Every day can be
Yeah.
humbling if we're talking about a smallmouth, which is why Andy Walls hates them, because apparently the largemouth, you can just catch them all the time, which I can't.
We can
but
rely on them a lot better than you
They
can
are
smallmouth.
more reliable.
Yeah,
There's
for
certain
sure.
lakes where I will fish for largemouth, yeah.
Yep. But
Whitefish is one of them. I don't trust them brown bastards out there, dude. I don't trust them.
oh man, if I could catch largemouth out there anymore. That lake's changed so much in the last 10, 15 years.
Lake's
that-
not even fun to fish for smallmouth. You just don't catch enough fat bass for me. Like, it's just not that fun. Like, largemouth, you can at least bust a nice school or something.
You can maybe. I've struggled to do that out there.
I did too this year.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
been-
it wasn't a lot of schools to be busted. Besides the one Novak one off of that I should have ran to, but I didn't have the balls to.
Yeah, he did good. Good
Your
job,
balls
Jake.
are bigger than mine, Novak. Nice job.
Seems to happen like way too often from Jacob. He needs to be a little bit more gentle.
He's conservative though. Like he's not this guy who's gonna go like scrap everything and go bang this random lily pad patch. Like he's a fairly conservative angler, yet
It works.
balls of steel.
It works, man. He
Yeah.
does well.
Stone cold Jacob Novak.
Yep.
But another like Brainerd, dude? No Becker boy, but Kavanaugh from
Like,
Brainerd.
he's like, we'll accept him. Like
Yeah.
he lives there now. He's part of the region.
Right.
Took him under the wing. I'm an outsider now, so I can't even probably say that. Like I can't say we'll accept him. They'll probably accept him, but like I just hope I can get back in that circle someday.
He's a nice young man.
Jacob, I like
He's
Jacob.
a nice young man. That's a nice young man.
I like him a lot better when he's not beating me, but I always
Oh,
like
for
him.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Got that grin on his face.
Yeah.
Just nice, quiet, wholesome Jacob.
Yep.
Just, I can't be mad at you.
How'd you do today, Jacob? Pretty good. That sucks for me.
Fuck. But smallmouth, okay? Smallmouth differences, right? So I thought I was a good smallmouth fisherman. I went to Sturge Bay, got my fucking teeth
Yeah.
kicked in. I'm like, fuck, I don't know how to. Great Lakes to me are different beasts.
different
if you're
game.
from Minnesota, you're a good smallmouth angler and you haven't fished the Great Lakes, to me,
It's a different game.
it is. And Chequamegon doesn't count, Hayden, but like it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Oahe Reservoir.
Yeah.
Very different, I think.
Yeah.
Granted, I've only been there in the early spring, and it was all about warm water reservoir.
Okay.
Like there's fucking 3 miles of lake that all the bags came from, and it was the warm water that we didn't burn the gas to go to, right?
Yeah.
But Sturgeon Bay is similar. In
Okay.
fact, I
Yeah.
feel like.
I
But,
mean, yeah. In the spring.
but we've talked a lot. You guys have won. I took second to you on the river, and I think
Mm-hmm.
you took second to me on the river or something.
I don't
or
think
some-
we got second, but yeah, we were in the top maybe 5. I don't remember what it was.
But yeah, what would you just say is the biggest difference in smallmouth, like around if you want to be a good smallmouth angler, or just fuck smallmouth?
Honestly, I don't think they're very different anywhere. I really don't. I think it's very similar fish. Like the Great Lakes might be the one anomaly just in the fact that it is fairly pressured, it is really clear, and a lot of those fish are quite old. So like I think they're pretty smart and they're not easy to catch out there, but otherwise from my experience, smallmouth act the same a lot of the places they go, and they live in sections of lake basically based off food. Like that's pretty much why they live where they live, whether they be bottom oriented or not, but it's food driven completely. So
I think they're food driven fish for
yeah,
sure.
where I think largemouth, there's food is part of the factor, but cover is more a factor than it is with a smallmouth. The smallmouth's okay with being pelagic and swimming. They'll go sit in structure. Like they will do it all. They really don't care. And that's what makes them so difficult. It's why I don't like them as much, is because everything's an option. You can't knock 100 feet of water off the list like you can for a largemouth 9 times out of 10.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Smallmouth, you can't. You can never cross anything off, really.
I mean, it depends on the lake, in my opinion. And
I
to
mean, for the
me,
most part, right?
everything's a spectrum, and largemouth to me are just a little bit more specific of a spectrum.
They're a homebody.
Yeah,
too,
they
you
are
know?
homebody, but I think Mille Lacs smallmouth are homebodies, kind of. Like, I don't know why I'm whispering about that, but
I don't know a ton, but maybe. Yeah.
I
Like,
kind of think that.
sure.
Like, seriously.
Well, like, yeah, there's certain rocks that you always catch one off of out there. But yeah.
I think there's certain boulders that, like, that fish is like, this is
my
my
rock.
fucking boulder.
Yeah.
And if you motherfuckers get near my motherfucking... I'm making babies on this boulder.
It's my rock.
I'm going to do yoga on this boulder. Like, I'm going to do Pilates. Like, yeah, I'm going to take somebody to dinner on this boulder.
Eat the little chiggler that crawls over.
When it's sunny, this boulder's a nice shady spot for me.
Yeah.
When it's cloudy, I might, swim a little bit further away from the boulder. Leech, I think, similar too.
Maybe.
I
I don't know, man.
I don't know either, man.
Like, I'm not
I don't
down
fish
there.
Mille Lacs enough anymore. Josh Douglas or Willard or some of those guys would probably know better than me
Yeah,
on
like
Mille Lacs.
you could ask them, be like, how many times did you catch that same one off the boulder? And you could figure out if they're home bodies or not. But largemouth, I can tell you, I've done that plenty of times. Caught the same one the next day off the stick or the dock or the clump of pads, you name it.
See, I think smallmouth are that way, Andy. Kinda.
I don't
Like-
fish them enough. I probably don't know.
So, it's weird, right? Like, I've fished tournaments where there's one spot, right? And, like, there's a window for that spot
Yeah.
with smallmouth, right? There's a window where they pull up there and they eat. They don't eat everything, so you better be throwing the right thing.
Yeah. But that's the spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you sit there and you cast at that spot. And there is an hour, 2 hours each day where you're going to catch 23 pounds
Yeah.
between those 2 hours. And you might catch 5, you might catch 10, you might catch 20. But it's like, and I feel like largemouth are that way too.
They can be.
Because, like, you can't just go catch a 5-pounder on a dock every day at the same time. Or,
No.
Like,
No. No, but like
they use cover different. That's what
Yeah.
I'll say. Like, the cover this cast is that we're making is different than cover what you're fishing for largemouth. But
yeah, I guess like if you catch them, it might change. But if you don't catch that largemouth, they stick around for a fair amount of time.
I've always wondered about that. Like, so you're a big advocate of not sticking them in practice.
Oh, I catch plenty in practice. I catch my
It's not
fair
the ones you
share.
see.
If I can tell that it's one I would like to have in the tournament, there's not a chance I'm setting the hook on.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I can see that it's something I want, no.
So you catch everything you don't want to catch in the tournament.
I catch a lot of that. Yeah, oh yeah. I flip at a lot of 14
That's
inchers.
little enough to catch.
Oh yeah. Weed those suckers out.
Dude, but like, fish are spooky. Like, maybe up north they're not, but like, what's like, to me, stealth is an advantage. If you can be stealthy,
Sure.
it's an advantage.
Yeah.
Do you have any tricks you utilize, or do you? But I also think there's like this Jim Severson where you do spook them, and like, there's probably something to that too, like where you back them into a corner where they fucking like, "Hey, uncle.
I would say the biggest thing I utilize, it's probably just come from experience, but it's being able to see from farther away where a higher percentage spot might be. So instead of getting up on it where it's too late, where like when I was first fishing shallow and going fast, like I'd blow stuff out, I'd get up on top of stuff, and like I was missing a lot of opportunities. But now it's like I might be on 80% flying down that bank, but I'll see something coming up and I'll just kind of slow up and turn the boat out and be able to make the right flip and making the right cast. That's another thing too when you're doing it. It's like you got to look in front and be able to like position yourself to be able to make that right cast quickly and effectively and then move on. Like it's like not just casting under the dock, it's making the right cast. Like the deepest, darkest shade pocket, farthest back in there. Like the hardest cast to make is the one you want to make.
I've noticed that with largemouth, and I guess with smallmouth sight fishing, the biggest thing I've learned is you don't cast on their head, you cast
That's
where
it.
their head's going.
Yeah. You lead those suckers.
Yes, like, no, they're swimming, like, where they are, like, turn like 3 clocks, whichever way they're going, and huck, like, it
Yep.
could even be overdo it. That's better than underdoing it.
Yeah.
Are largemouth that way?
If they're out in the open, don't want to throw it right on top of them either. Same thing. Pretty much every species, you know. Like, yeah, you don't want to spook them when your stuff enters. And, I mean, there's a little more to it, like, that we could... There's some, like, angles kind of make a difference. Like, if you think about a bait fish, if your fish is swimming away from you and you cast past it, less likely that it's going to bite with, like, a minnow swimming at it, right? Like, in nature, a minnow never swims at that fish. So if you can get it to quarter your bait where you throw it across its face and quarter it like a 45 coming across their face, they bite it, like, way more frequently because it's fleeing away from them. It's more natural.
Yeah.
Like, so if you can position to where they're looking at you at all, like, get them facing you, they're way more likely to catch.
Yeah, dude. Like,
that I know. So, like, I'll position my boat, like, if it's stationary, most of the time they're moving.
Right.
So, like, you're kind of just playing angles and trying to get a good cast. Now, certain lakes, it doesn't matter. Like, plop it on their nose and they're going to bite it, right?
Right.
But on those situations when they're tough, yeah, paying attention to your angle, how far you're leading it, you know, how high it is, how fast, like, all that stuff does make a slight difference. But that angle, I think, is the biggest one for me. And, like, making sure my bait lands where they can't see it and bringing it into them, but not at them.
Dude, and
that makes sense.
Crazy because, like, I think about angle and how I'm bringing the bait all the time. And then, like, sight fishing, it's like you kind of, like, crack out at seeing a big one or something, right?
Yeah.
And you stop and you get, like, you stop thinking about the angle. Like, you're like, there's a big one. I'm going to fucking throw my lure at it,
Get it
right?
over there, yeah.
But, like, if we're on the river, I'm thinking about, okay, I want to make sure my bait is moving like they're expecting.
Naturally,
yeah. You know? And it's like, for whatever reason, like, holy fuck, there's a 4-pounder crackhead. Like,
You don't think about it on the lake as much.
It's hard to do, but those guys who are good at sight fishing, there's a code to it.
Oh,
It's its own art form, and I'm so fascinated by it because I don't have that. And I've had, you know, I can sight fish, you know, okay, but no Jim Severson or, you know, Andy Walls. Or,
I'm not a good sight fisherman. No.
But it's crazy to me because I feel like those guys are really good at sight fishing them smallies. They'll almost like it's a different game where you're like you are chasing that fish until it gives up.
I've fished with people that can do that. Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
I want to dig into that if that's possible because to me that's so fascinating. And I don't think to me that's like those fish that nobody thinks they can catch. Those guys catch those fish, right?
I've watched it happen twice in one day.
Okay. What was that like?
It was on whitefish, and I was fishing with Brandon Cizik, and he did it. And the first one, I don't even remember what happened. I think I broke it off or something. They're spawning. Both these two I think were garden fry. Like they weren't on beds, but they were pretty stationary, like fairly easy to get to cooperate. And the first one, I broke it off. Like it was young, right? And bit right next to the boat and just did this He-Man hook set on a spinning rod and pow! Like, oh, dumb. Like 5 feet of line out. And we chased that one, so I broke it off. And it was like on an inside weed line. So it was sand inside and it was cabbage on the outside.
So you break it off and then chase it?
Yep, and it's kind of weaving through the cabbage. And we're just like staying on the outside of this fish and just keep spooking it like shallow.
Make sure you stay on the outside of it.
Just trying to bump it in shallow so we could keep seeing it. Because we're like, it's going to go back to the fry, right? So we're bumping it. And it like never, it might have eventually, right? But it never was going to. Like it just kept going. And like we're pushing it for like 100 yards, football field. And finally it goes up on the sand and like there's a little basketball-sized depression and it just kind of goes and sits next to it. And Brandon threw over there and one casted it. It's like, that was strange. Like we've been casting at this thing for 45 yards. Like that is in casting range.
At it.
Yep, nothing. And then as soon as it stopped swimming, it ate. We're like, huh. So next one, like I don't remember what happened. I think it ate half my worm. Like I just was getting lucky that it, like we'd see one while I was standing there and had the drop shot in my hand and I got the first cast twice in a row. And so it ate half my worm and missed it. And like same thing, and like spooks. And we just quick get on the troller and it's like this one spooked kind of this parallel to the break. So like we were able to just follow it down the break, but it stayed up on the top edge and we just kept bumping it shallower. Same thing. Like we chased this one for probably a half mile. Like a long ways, 45 minutes an hour. It was a 5-pounder. Like, it was well worth it, right? We wanted it. And so we're chasing it. And finally, it kind of slides up onto a patch of darker sandgrass and just sits there. One cast, bit again. So, like, I haven't done it a bunch, but I have seen other spooked fish that we have caught similar. Like, if you can get them to settle down and follow them till they do that, you can definitely get them to bite again.
That is so cool to me, dude.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it is in that fish. Is it I quit, or is it I'm comfortable with you now?
It seems like a comfortability thing, for sure. Like,
got it. So you're almost just acclimating yourself with it.
You just kind of hanging out at a distance.
Meeting a new dog. Like,
kind of, yeah. You kind of hold your hand out there.
It's a Rottweiler. It's a little like a little guardy right away, and you just kind of like.
You dip your hand in the water so they can smell you a little bit. You know.
Yes, dude. Dude, that's like, I was never taught that, right? And see, like, that to me.
That's stuff you learn on the dock.
Dude,
when there's 7 bluegills to catch all day, like, you are going to catch those 7 bluegills.
Oh, I get that.
You know what I mean?
But, like, to stick with a fish for a football field.
Yeah.
If it's the right fish, I get trying, but
and it stays
I've
in
given up
eyeshot.
at 50 yards a lot because I probably don't know how to follow them right. But, like, you get, okay, what about Mille Lacs? You got to open flat, right? Like, that fish is going to kind of take you where it wants to go.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Johnstons, some of those real good shallow water anglers, that's like a key little deal that there's people out there who have perfected that, and that is their forte, and they have won hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, that is a seek and destroy. That's a different type of fishing than is taught on YouTube, on like, I don't know, is there a YouTube video on how to like that getting the fish
Probably
comfortable
not.
with you thing is wild.
Well,
and it's weird because smallmouth are so curious, right?
Well, I see those guys doing other stuff too.
Okay.
Like, a lot of those guys will go around on high doing the same type of a deal, but when they spook one, they'll just sit, and a lot of times I'm seeing that fish circle back.
Yeah.
And like, they're like, oh, there it is, and you can tell it totally reappears to them.
Right.
And like, you think back to spring, and you're like, oh, that's totally what they do.
Yeah.
Like, you bump them off a spot, even if they're not on a bed, they're coming back to check it out. Like, that's what they do. So like, I think those guys, they're pretty keen to it, and they're just really good at getting them to bite, period, right? So like, they can spook them and get them to bite pretty easily compared to me.
Same, dude. I feel the same way. Like, everything I've learned about smallmouth fishing is like I try to opposite of sight fish them. Like, when I'm fishing for a smallmouth, I'm convinced that if I can't see them, they still might see me, but they might not. Like,
And they're going to be easier to bite. To bite.
Like, I don't need to chase it for 100 yards, but like, I never thought I could chase it for 100 yards and make it bite. Like,
oh yeah,
I want to like fuck with that more.
yeah. I watched it happen twice in one day for smallmouth. Like, I'd never really experienced it before then. But
Yeah,
that was pretty wild.
Totally, man. And like, I've heard stories about like Jimmy catching smallies other guys' boats, like next to him, like seeing them where they can't even see the smallmouth. But then it's like, you almost need to just understand how they act enough that when it makes the right like turn or movement, it's like, got you. Like,
Yep.
I feel like the guys who are good at sight fishing, they can just watch that fish and know it's like they don't even need to cast yet, and it's got you.
Yep. Yeah, and they like, there's a few things. I'm not good at it yet, but they're looking for like the guys that are really good, from what I can tell and what I've heard. They're not looking for fish. They're looking for parts of the fish. There's certain things that stand out more, and that's what they're keying on and what they're looking for.
What?
Yeah.
Parts of the fish?
Dude,
Looking at that fish dick?
No. Interesting,
If you can
right?
see the fish dick, you can catch it.
But interesting.
Fins. It's got to be something with the fins. Color change? I could see a color change like
But
with
like
smallmouth.
So like smallmouth, if you look at them, their front pec fins,
Yep.
they got really white rays on the outside. Really white. And if you
Okay.
if you're looking straight down, they stand out.
Yeah.
So like
yeah.
in those deeper areas, the guys that are really good, like they're looking for like little white lines sometimes. Like it's
If their lines are white, they'll bite?
No, just
Like-
not for getting a bite or not.
Oh,
but
just for
seeing
finding.
fish that you can't normally see.
Oh, it's that
Like it's
little
black,
white fin
It's
on
black
the-
down there, but you can just see the fin rays on the outside
Sure.
of the pec fins.
Sure, sure. Some days I feel like I'm real good at seeing them, and I'm like better than other people. And other days I feel like I suck. I don't know what it is. I don't.
I try not to rely on it because I feel like I always suck at sight fishing. It's not my gig.
I'm getting better at it. It's not an area that's my strength at this point, but I've picked up a few tricks over the last year. But winter is here, Christmas is coming, and the greatest gift a fisherman can ever receive in the off season is new fishing stuff to tinker with over the winter months. In the therapy world, they call it a coping mechanism to treat withdrawals, but in the Bass Galaxy, we call it interdimensional fuel. But it's tough to trust someone else to pick out your fishing equipment, which is why you should tell your wife or girlfriend to get you a gift card to the greatest tackle shop north of the Mason-Dixon, Waypoint Angler Supply, for this upcoming holiday season. It's the gift that keeps on giving. One gift card from Waypoint Angler Supply can go pretty far. It can strengthen your marriage, assist with more time outdoors with your kids, strengthen your soul, and more. But you're probably asking at this point how a gift card from Waypoint Angler Supply could provide such benefits. Well, the answer is simple. Wife buys you a $100 gift card for $80 since she used the code GALAXY20. Instant dopamine hit for her saving money shopping. You then take that gift card and pick up a new rod, reel, or sneaky new bait that can win you a tournament next year. You win $2,000 in that tournament, you take $1,000 of that, you put it into the tournament entry fund, then take that other $1,000 and get your wife or girlfriend a trip or something that makes her happy. It's simple math and science, folks. If you're one of them ice fishermen, I should probably mention that Waypoint Angler Supply is fully stocked for ice season and has all the stuff you need for your next winter fishing adventure. Whether it's a gift card for Christmas or a new Veselka custom ice rod, Waypoint Angler Supply is your Santa Claus this year. So stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. Don't you forget, use the code GALAXY20 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. World champion barbecue born in the pits of Memphis, Tennessee, family owned and located just north here in Minnesota. Just north of Memphis, barbecue, ladies and gentlemen. One look at their trophy room and one taste of their barbecue is all it takes to know it's the very best. But the J&O story runs much deeper than that, and bringing people together, whether it's friends, family, or fishing buddies, with some mouth-watering smoked barbecue, that's what they're all about, which is about as American as it gets. If you smoke meat, if you like to grill meat, if you like to cook meat, you need to try the J&O Memphis Dry Rub Seasoning, which will enhance your barbecue game instantaneously. Also, voted world's best sauce in 2022. You can bring this right to your kitchen table. They've got 3 flavors, and each one is better than anything you'll find in the supermarket. Let's take things up a notch this summer. You can order their dry rub and world-famous barbecue sauce right on their website. Visit jnomemphis.com. That's jnomemphis.com. Or visit their Facebook page for food truck locations and schedule. Barbecue.
I'm Johnny B with Just North of Memphis Barbecue, and I approve this message.
Oh, smallmouth.
Yeah, they're something else.
Do you want a beer?
I'm good for now.
You want water?
No.
Do you have to pee?
No.
Me either.
Yeah, smallmouths. They're something else. But they're fun to catch.
Dude,
You
they're
know?
the best to catch.
They're fun to catch, for sure.
I think they're fun to chase because of that aspect, right?
I get it, yeah.
I don't know. Largemouth are fun too.
I like the different ways that you get to fish for largemouth. That's what like outside of the fact that they're
I get that.
reliable, like for a tournament angler, I enjoy the techniques that I get to use to fish for them on the day in average. Like more so, I think why I like largemouth more.
I think I fish for smallmouth different than most people, Andy.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
I feel like I catch more smallmouth on a bait caster than most people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I
think
try
we're
to
similar
catch
there.
them that way
Yeah,
every time
same.
if I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting better with the spinny pole with them. But largemouth need a spinny pole. You fish Tonka now. You got your spinny pole out?
Yeah, I have. No, thank you, but I've done it. Unfortunate, it works. Yeah, I don't know. For some, I don't know. I'm a power largemouth fisherman at heart. Like, give
I
me
know
the
you
big
are.
weight, give me the frog, give me the buzzbait, swim jig. Like, give me something like that. I don't care.
This is a cool part of the spectrum to me is like preferred weight on your jig or Texas rig. I feel like if I'm talking to you versus I'm talking to me, like
Yeah.
we fish a jig in a Texas rig, but we don't do it the same.
Not typically, I don't think.
I feel like you're on the heavier end of the spectrum and I'm
Probably.
on the lighter end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's how I was raised in the sport. The guys who kicked my ass in the boat
Yeah.
were throwing a 3/8 or a half-ounce jig and like, you know, a quarter to a 5/16 ounce Texas rig
Sure, yeah.
unpegged, right?
Yep.
And I feel like when I talk to you, you're like 5/8 and 3/4 ounce motherfucking jig, dog.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, not it, but right, that's it. Brandon and I used to call that the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, dude.
Like, that's
it
it.
works.
Feed them the meat and potatoes.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. And I love a half ounce, you know, a reactionary bite. And that's something I've developed, I would say, later in my fishing. you know,
Sure.
more
Yeah.
the last, 7 years or so. But what is that? Why the heavier weight versus the lighter weight? And I think there's a time and place where I'll whoop that sweet ass with like a 5/16 or quarter ounce Texas rig, but
There is. Yeah.
on a lot of cases, you guys have won a pile of shit up there on a heavier jigger Texas rig.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's all you guys do for largemouth up there, besides a buzzbait.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
that's just you, but
that kind of all, man, what year was it? Probably 2013, 14.
you guys
somewhere in
made
there.
hay up there. I feel like Czech still does now.
Oh,
that you're
yeah.
not there.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Like, you guys don't change much. You just
no, it's the same.
do it.
Same techniques, really. I mean,
Yeah.
slight differences here and there, some tweaks, right? But, like, it's the same general concept.
See, I go to the lake. See, I've never dedicated myself to going to the lake with a big weight and just going around the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I can't talk shit.
Yeah. Like, I honestly don't know what got us to it and why we started going heavier and heavier. Like, we were saying quarter ounce jig, 3/8 ounce jig, maybe a half. Half was a big one.
I like a half.
Right? And, like, it just started. There was a couple of, like, a year where Gull Lake started taking, on average. So, like, for people that really don't know the history of Gull, like, big weights now, right? Like, guys are catching bags out there pretty consistently. But if you
Yeah.
rewind back to 2006, and you went out there in July, a good 5-fish bag, a good bag was 14 pounds. That was, like, you were probably winning.
Right.
Like, if you had 12 and a half in July for 5, you were taking a check.
That's crazy,
Right?
dude.
Right? So, like, this was good.
You
And
don't
there
even
was
cash with 15.
no,
Oh.
like, you crying still,
Yeah.
right? So,
Unless it's fall.
still don't cash with 15. Anyways, so, like, there was just a year where all of a sudden 15 and 16 happened a few times. And it's like, you just kind of got to figure out how, like, if that's now the new potential good bag is 16 pounds, like, we got to catch that. It was how to do that. And I don't know if it would just, like, the half-ounce jig was, like, catching more big ones. So we just, I think, naturally stepped up a little bit more. And, like, back then, like, we switched a lot front and back. So, like, we were both doing that. And when I spent my time in the back, I really liked throwing that 3/4 farther. Like, the guy in the front flipping the half, I'd just throw the 3/4 up there a little farther and, like, crash it around through the stuff, on the way
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And it worked pretty good. So then we started just like using 3/4 ounce Texas weights and just flipping the 3/4 everywhere. And it's like, oh, we're getting a class bigger. And that's where it started. And it evolved to a point where that lake got thick grass now. And now it's like almost a necessity to fish some of the good areas. Like if you don't have a 3/4, maybe a 1 ounce, like you might not get through right. So like it's different now, but it first originally came for quality of fish. And like I look back to when Hackney won in Cayuga with that 1 ounce hack attack in cabbage. Like if anyone remembers that one watching it, like he's flipping in 16 feet of water, pretty clean, not thick grass, a 1 ounce and a 1 1/4. And he was saying that it was all about rate of fall to get those bites. Yeah. I'm guessing that's part of what it is. And like I love Hackney. I've listened to him a lot,
Absolutely.
right?
It's beauty.
And he talks like as the water gets hot, that's what really triggers bites more when you're flipping a jig. Is the rate of fall.
Yep.
So I was like, maybe we just like weren't pissing the big ones off enough, for the longest time. Like they've probably always been there, right? Like I don't know.
I think there's definitely something to that. That's one way to make a big fish bite and trigger it. And I think the milfoil thing helped with that.
See, and that all happened like at the same time.
What do you do with the coontail?
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah. You don't set it down. It doesn't matter what kind of weeds are out there. You just flip it in there.
There's less of like a canopy though, and I think they use it different. No?
They get right in that stuff too.
I like it, Andy.
I mean, I'm sure they use the outside of it. But like same thing. I felt the same with hydrilla for the longest time. Like they don't get in it.
Oh, they get
in it, right? But my experience, they were never in it. When I was in Florida, every time I fished around it, they were never in it. On the edge of it like crazy. Just like they get around coontail up here.
But you guys figured out a way to make them bite in it, I think, right?
They were on the edge.
Yeah.
Well, it was clumpy, right? So like
Well, you were there in December too.
Yeah, and like it was solid hydrilla, but like you could make a cast, you'd pull through clumps and there'd be on the edge of others. Like it, there was holes in it, plenty of them that you could just throw a cast and fish it. It wasn't a big mat of hydrilla where we were catching them. It was like a cast the other direction.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it because that mat got too much pressure?
It was huge and expansive, and we were fishing like some obscurity on the outside edge of it, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yep, that makes sense.
On the deeper side of it.
Yep. I love Florida fishing, man. The boys are down there now.
I know. I saw that the post kind of come up through the last few days, and like a little jealous.
It's got to make you
jealous.
Yeah, that's got to be harder for you.
There.
I know, man.
Love that place,
dude. I've qualified for nationals twice in South Carolina both times, which Hartwell is a fun place to go. It's just I don't think you can get more polar opposite of where we're from.
Not really. No.
Like, you know what I mean? As far as like going to a
really.
place where you can kind of like, I feel more comfortable in Florida than I do Hartwell every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to go to Florida sometime for a tournament.
Yeah, it's probably like I haven't fished everywhere, right? But it's probably my favorite that I've been to outside
right
of
up your
Minnesota.
alley.
Yeah, it's
right up your alley.
I like everything about it so far.
Yeah. So I guess Andy Walls, you're kind of in the shadows right now.
Yeah,
but
hiding.
And there's a lot of guys that would say, "What the fuck" to that.
Sure.
Why are you hiding and where are you going? And I think this is an important lesson, like as far as like being prepared. And I think what you're doing is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Because we're told to always stay relevant, keep doing it, and like there's tough decisions that need to be made sometimes if you want to live out your dream, if you want to do things. And I guess for me that's really tough.
It is. It's like I just listened to the Pat podcast, Pat Schlapper, and like he said it exactly. Like his saving up, getting that little safety net and being able to do it to go to the pro side is like anyone that's aspiring to do that, where I'm kind of maybe on the fence of pondering. Like it's something I would love to do. right? But are you cut out for it? Is it really feasible? Like, there's so many looming questions,
Dude,
right?
we all ask that. I
Right.
feel like, I don't know. I feel like it takes
So,
a specific
I'd say
personality to
I'm
not
on
be
that
way.
path right now of
Yeah.
what Pat is. Like, I'm probably trying to save up some money. I'm cutting back on fishing some of the local tournaments of just, like, not that I don't want to be there, right?
Yep.
I want to go to every single one of them. I will be at every one if I could. I would
Right.
love that. But if it takes not doing as many for 2-3 years and, like, just saving that money and guaranteeing that maybe I can do something a little bigger eventually, that's kind of the path I'm looking at right now, I guess.
I just thought it's because you're a slave to The Sims, man.
You know, it was partially that too, for sure. Like, if I had the free time, I would have done it.
Dude,
Like,
free time's hard.
yeah. So, like, right now I'm justifying it with the savings.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Right? But,
Well,
yeah,
it
comes
was a
down
good
to free
career
time
jump
as well.
for you too, man. And like, yeah, I wasn't knocking it.
No, oh, no, I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. That I'm just, personally, it maybe makes me sleep better at night when I'm like, I'm saving a bunch of money to maybe make the jump. Really, I'm just working my tail off selling T-shirts.
Well, you have the talent, man, and I think everybody knows that. And I think it was cool watching Keith this year.
Man, that was like one of the hardest things to do because you just want to be in the boat with him, like rooting him on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I'd
dude.
done it for so many years. It was so hard to watch. And like Bass Track, guys love Keith, but until the end of this year, he's the worst Bass Track guy in the history of Bass Track.
Yes, I stopped looking just
Yeah.
because, like, no,
In the
I'll wait till
history.
weigh-in.
Yep. Like, was the worst. Like, if he put something in there, it was guaranteed 7 pounds light of what he actually had. Now he's actually gotten pretty good, right? Like, you can rely on him now, but man, for a while there, it was like, who knows what's happening? Like, who knows?
Man, dude, my heart broke with him, dude, for that.
That the end of the year this year? Or what are you talking?
I don't know how I don't do the same thing if I'm in his position, like 7th in points going into that,
Dude,
last stretch. Like, I thought he had it.
I think everybody did.
Yeah.
I think he might have been, a little more nervous than he wanted to be in that position. Like, his first time really, like, making a run at it, right? And he's close.
First time being in that position.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, like, I'm sure he had a lot to handle. There was a lot more there than just fishing for him, and I'm guessing that probably weighed on his decisions a little bit, and he's a better man because of it, and I think he'll be real tough this next year.
He's fishing again, right?
I
I'm going to have him out.
certainly
to ask
hope.
him personally.
Yes, I mean, like, as far as I'm aware, yes, and, like, I just can't wait for him to show up at Leech. I'm going to be up on Rainey, but I think Rainey gets over before day 3, and I know he'll be there day 3, so I'll be excited to go out there and root him on.
Absolutely, dude. And I guess that's your tournament partner, and I don't think there's much difference between you two as far as, like, skill set of an angler, and he's older than you. He's got more time.
Completely different, though. Like,
You're very different anglers.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you both deadly, right? And-
yeah, I would, yeah. Like, he's probably more scary, in my opinion.
Oh, he's scary.
Yeah, like, yeah.
I'm scared of both of you, but
Well, I appreciate that, but you shouldn't be.
But
Pretty
like,
gentle.
Keith isn't a safe fisherman.
No. Like, he is okay going for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this was the year where it's like, I feel like that he had to have questioned that a little bit and maybe not done the normal Keith self. Like, it's almost like when you're put in those positions,
Yeah.
you get away from.
Yeah, I haven't asked him. Like, maybe I have a different
I've been
way,
meaning to
right?
talk to him. I've been scared to, kind of, like, just because I feel so bad and I love the guy.
Oh, he's got such a good attitude. He's so optimistic. He's mentally in the right place with everything that happened and how it happened. He had such a great year. He really did.
Dude, he
Like,
did, man.
such a great year. And if you look back at, like, all the other Opens qualifications and, like, the year that he had as far as points wise go, he would have made it most every, like, Jamie Bruce said something on his podcast that no one had ever qualified for the elites making all top 50s in all 9 Opens. It had never been done until this year.
Really?
Yeah, that didn't break a top 50. And I don't even know for sure if it was done or not, but I believe it may have happened this year, the way those points kind of stacked up.
Yeah.
It may have.
JT Tompkins, maybe, or whatever.
There was a couple of them that did pretty well consistently.
Yeah,
but
who the fuck are those guys?
that was
Jesus.
the first time. Jamie Bruce, he's a stat guy. Like, that was
Yeah.
the first time that has ever happened. So,
Crazy.
like, really, 2 times not being in the top 50 all year, like, that's pretty good. Like, it's not great, but that's pretty good.
Was that Tuma? He only
Yeah. 2 non-50, maybe 3. Like,
So
one
he
might have
only
been like a
missed
50
two
second.
50 cuts, and he didn't make the elites.
Well, I think they cut, isn't it 40 something?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, he missed the cut 3 times, I think.
dude.
Yeah.
Hell of
maybe
a year.
4. But yeah, like, really good year. I think it was 3. But
Man, dude.
yeah, he had a great year, made a top 10. Like, you know, and that was his first time running them all. Like, he'd fished
Can you imagine if he'd have done it like 5 years before that? He'd be there.
where he'd be at right now. Yeah,
Like-
exactly. But we've always talked, and, like, I'm a firm believer, like, the third time doing something is your best run at it.
Third time's a charm, baby.
Yep, I firmly believe it.
Huh.
So I think this next year will be quite good for him.
I like it, dude.
Yeah.
I hope so, man.
I mean, that's all we can do is hope, and I'm the eternal optimist, so I'm going to be sending good vibes every direction I can.
Dude, he'd be I want it to happen just from the standpoint of it would be a non-Tonka or river angler.
Yeah.
You know, doing it.
What
I want to
said
see that.
couldn't be done, really, right?
I mean, Seth
fabled-
got on this podcast and said that he didn't say it couldn't be done, but
It hasn't happened.
it hasn't happened yet. So you want to do it, you got to go to Tonka or the river. And I just noticed Andy Walls happened to meet a nice young gal and moved to Lake Minnetonka.
But what about Chad
What
Foster?
a funny coinkydink.
Because he technically made it and then just put it aside.
He made the elites?
FLW tour.
Oh, yeah. But
And fished the Forest Wood Cup.
couldn't you... This is not taking a dang thing from Chad Foster, first off, because I've got the utmost respect for that.
I was
dude.
just curious if that
But
qualifies.
couldn't you
'cause
just
he's a
enter
non-Tonka.
Couldn't you just enter the FLW tour? You didn't have to qualify for that.
I don't know. I really
think
don't know.
you could just pay and fish the FLW Pro Tour.
Okay, maybe. And I don't even know if he ever went that far. He made it
I know
to the,
that dude has
the
won
Cup.
more shit outside the state than most anglers would ever dream of. When he
Yeah.
went down to Florida, he won a bunch of shit.
He did good in Tennessee, too.
Yeah, like Foster, I've got a lot of respect for Foster.
Yeah.
Did Tuma fish with Foster or did you fish with Foster?
Tuma fished with Chad before I did with
And-
Tuma.
And you fished with Cizik at that time?
Yes. Well, Kyle Wood, actually.
Oh, Kyle Wood, yeah.
Yep, and then Chad moved away, and Tuma started fishing with somebody else, and I was fishing with Kyle, and then Brandon, and then Brandon went and fished with Jim, and Tuma, I don't remember. I started fishing with Keith. Him and that other guy parted ways, and yeah, the rest is history.
Well, you fished with a lot of people. Who have you all fished with, Andy? Like,
That's pretty much it for like.
let's go national. You fished with Tak.
Oh yeah.
Takahiro Omori?
Yeah, that was pretty.
You
fun.
got to fish with Takahiro Omori.
I did, yeah, up in Grand Rapids after like they did that MLF thing up there.
Oh, big one.
Yeah,
I got go.
and he just
Got go.
Iowa guy, right? So he knew Tom Newstrom.
I knew it.
Yep.
I knew Tom.
Linked me up
I
and-
knew him.
I got to fish with him for a day. It was super awesome.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I got to hear the in person. I knew it.
I knew
I knew
it.
it.
I knew it.
Yeah, I got to
knew
hear
it.
it. Yeah.
I heard he pirated that spot, but that doesn't matter.
Which like the one in the classic? Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. Who else have you fit? Like you fished with?
I got to spend an afternoon in the boat with Skeet Reese. Back.
Okay.
This was back like pretty close to when he won the classic.
Okay.
So quite a ways back.
Who else?
Like buzz haircut Skeet Reese. If you remember the buzz haircut Skeet
Yeah.
Reese, that's the version I got to hang out with and
This was
shoot the shit
post
with.
hair gel. Like there's a phase between the hair gel Skeet Reese's, right?
Yeah,
There's hair gel Skeet
No
Reese.
dye. It was
This
brown
was
hair.
post dye though.
Yeah, he had a goatee.
He did dye, and then he's like, "Fuck it, I don't do my hair no more." And then he started doing his hair again later
Yep, this
Yeah.
was like he just had a buzz cut for a year.
in his prime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
won the classic.
broke 10 rods of the 20. Won the classic.
They were the yellow ones. Yep.
Oh yeah, right in McGill. Yep. You buy 6, you might break 3, but we'll replace them.
Yep. So I got to spend a day with him. That was pretty fun. He's an interesting cat. Ike and Ellie, I've fished with him a couple of times.
What?
Yep. I've shot a TV show with Ike and Ellie and 2 commercials. I've done a lot with Ike. I've actually, pretty good relationship with him. He's
Okay.
a wild man. So
Is that it?
I
feel
fished
like
with
there's-
Fighter a few times.
I
Yep.
never fished with that guy. That's nuts.
Pretty sure I fished with Austin.
Felix?
Yeah.
I fished with Austin one day this year.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, mostly going to be Midwest guys, right? I fished with Gussie.
Dude.
Yeah.
All right. So talk to me about, okay, so of the pros you fished with, Gussie, Skeet, Ike, Talk, Austin, Seth, what was the craziest experience in the boat, and what was like the most memorable thing you learned in the boat from one of those guys? Like, what was the weirdest thing, and then what was like the most beneficial part?
The weirdest thing was one day with Ike, and it has nothing. It's actually more fishing weird. We were fishing a river, and we were catching them on topwaters. In middle of the day, the bite, they were still kind of biting, but it shifted. And he went into his topwater box and he grabbed what I thought was the same thing he was throwing and tied it on and started fishing again. And he then 10-to-1 me over the next 30 minutes. It's like, dude, what is the deal? He's like, oh, I'm put on a balsa skitter pop. And we were throwing plastic poppers, high density plastic rattling poppers. He went to a silent, high rising, doesn't really push a bunch of water skitter pop. And he's like, they were kind of rolling underneath it, not really committing. He's like, this is way better when that happens. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Noted. Got it. And they stop eating this one good, go to something more subtle. Sure, I can do that. So I didn't have one. I put on a clear popper, which was my subtle go-to, high density, but started catching them good. I was like, all right, thank you. So that was one of the cool things. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Little nugget. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's probably one of the coolest things. What was the other part of the question?
What's the weirdest thing? Where you're like, this is weird. Getting in with any of those guys. I know Gussie's probably none of that, but.
So I have a weird story with Gussie, and it's an ice fishing one.
Yeah.
And it was kind of back to that curiosity of the smallmouth thing. And it was we were ice fishing, we were filming. I was working for the Lindners at the time, and we were filming for Northland Fishing Tackle, making commercials.
Yep.
For ice tackle. And we were trying to get strikes on camera. So underwater footage of fish eating their tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, I don't know if we can get a smallmouth on camera eating it. He's like, but if you get the lure down there and get it where you want it and then drop the camera down, he's like, I guarantee you we can get one swimming through frame with this lure on here. We can do it every time we drop the camera. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, they're so curious. When you drop the camera, they swim right up to it. I promise you, if there's one on this hump, it'll swim through frame. It's like, really? So we got the lure set up, drilled the hole, start to drop the camera, and literally the camera gets to bottom. 5 seconds later, smallmouth swims by, and another one swims by. And it's like, yep. So we did that 4 or 5 humps in a row and worked every single time. So I was like, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But then then doing that job, I learned more. Bill dove a lot. Dove a lot. So he would be down in scuba gear, filming lures, filming just underwater stuff. But he literally would come up and be like, I need an ice rod. And he's he calls it snishing, snorkel fishing. So he's down there with the video camera and an ice rod, just catching stuff on camera with an ice rod, because they swim right up to him. They don't know what he is. They're like, this is so crazy. Yep. So snishing, snorkel fishing.
I want to do that.
Yeah. It works really good for smallmouth. Largemouth are much more skittish. Bluegills you can catch pretty easy, but smallmouth you can catch.
Yeah, dude, they're curious.
Yeah.
Chad, we were talking about it a couple times on here where you can stomp around on the bottom and they'll come up to you.
Yeah. So I was blown away, and I think they're pretty curious, kind of, those boys fishing the Great Lakes, spooking them and having them turn around and come back. Maybe they're harder to catch after some of that stuff, but they're willing to feed.
Yeah. And with smallmouth in general, there's an attraction mechanism to the best 1-2 in smallmouth fishing is a guy throwing a moving bait up front and a guy throwing a finesse bait in back.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because they're so curious where, 90% of them are just going to follow that bait because they're curious, and maybe 5 to 10% of them bite that moving bait, right? Mm-hmm. But that moving bait's calling 90% of those smallmouth in, and they don't want to eat that moving bait, but they're like shiny, fucking curious, shiny.
Yeah.
So they follow it, and it's a weird fucking sport, man. It's a weird sport.
Yeah.
Piss me off, but I love it.
Well, it's always changing. So, like, every time you think you got something figured out, you may as well throw it away.
Totally, man. I'm rigging up darters right now. Like,
Yep.
What the fuck?
Yep. Probably never catch one on it again.
Probably never
Because you
throw it.
pre-rigged them.
Dude, look at Tor already. That's what I hate about a darter. They tear. Look at that.
It's no good.
I want to throw it on a bait caster because spinning rods suck in the cold.
See, I don't mind them. I don't mind spinning rods in the cold. I actually prefer them sometimes because I can wear thicker gloves.
Dude, the braid just does not do well when it's freezing.
Just go full fluoro.
Full fluoro?
Sure.
Sometimes. I actually think there's something to that, though, with the full fluoro and how your bait presents.
It's certainly different. You can just look at your line angle, man.
Right. That's
Like,
all you need to
it's-
look. Yeah, it's a different deal.
Uh-huh.
And then, like, fucking jig your shit off of some cover and, like, boing, like, different deal.
I like the way it feels, yeah.
I
When
do
you get
too.
that bite.
I just don't like how it handles on that spinning pole.
No, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. There's a certain way to spool it.
Yep.
You got a trick for spooling it?
I put it in a bucket of water.
In what?
Put the spool in a bucket of water.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you reel it a certain way?
Well,
Onto the
I
reel?
play with it, but it's usually labeled down.
Label
typically.
down onto the reel. Label down into the water on the reel.
Yep, so it can float and kind of slowly spin.
Oh, it floats.
Yeah.
Dude, I've never fucking spooled a wet spool. Like, I've never wet spooled before. I'm sorry.
Man,
Never-
you should try it.
I've only dry spooled.
Yeah, you should try it. You're missing out.
Y'all
That's
ever
how I do
wet
it.
spool? Dude, I don't know anybody who wet spools, man.
Well,
You're the only
trendsetter.
wet spooler
I'm a
I know.
trendsetter, man.
You spool wet, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that just fluoro on a spinning pole, or do you always spool wet?
Just fluoro on a spinning pole. Actually, no, braid too on a spinning pole, mono. Spinning rod.
Why?
Less twists, I guess.
Less twists?
I get
'Cause
my
it's
line
wet?
manages better. No, because
Oh.
it's the spool is floating. Like when you throw that spool in the water, you got a bucket with some water. You got your
Yep.
spool in there, and then you're reeling, and like your line's going on your reel,
Yep.
but the spool's floating. So as your line's coming off, it's also twisting and spinning all the twist out of it.
Oh, dude, it's kind of like when you get a really bad backlash and
You get your line in the water.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, get it in the water.
It's funny how my backlashes help me understand that
Yeah.
fucking principle there.
Do you remember the leverage buzz baits and spinner baits?
Mm-mm.
So it was a spinner bait, and then it had like cable, like steel wire cable, but really heavy, thick, like what you would use to like pull your trolling motor in and out. That attached your hook.
Okay.
So the theory was like they couldn't get leverage on you; it could move. And this
I actually think I've heard of that.
this booyah chatterbait was the same way.
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. So like that was my first chatterbait, and I used to just love this gold color, right? But yeah, that's like where it kind of went to, and like back in those days, like throw it out there and just reel it in,
Yep.
and you were catching them.
Yep.
And now like I find myself doing that days and being like, why am I not catching anything? I'm like, well, shoot, I'm not like stopping it. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like
yeah.
like you really got to focus in and be like, yeah, you got to make it do stuff now because it's totally fished a lot more than what it was. Like I don't even know. It's got to have been out since the 90s. I have no idea.
For sure.
I found out about it in 06, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like a trailer is a big deal on a jig, and I think what trailer you put on a jig can completely change like what that jig does, right?
Sure. Yeah.
A chatterbait to me is like almost that on like steroids as
Yeah.
far as like the fact just the fact of you're pretty much always casting it and moving it, back. So there's baits that help that bait ride up better. There's baits that help that bait track down through the grass better.
Yeah.
And thinking about that day to day and lake to lake and weather to weather is to me, I'm really impressed with the people who can figure out a chatterbait bite in, day out, because I put it down before that,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same thing with you going finding them out deep, or it's the same. It really is. It is. You go to your comfort spots, and that's just I think what everyone's going to revert to anytime they go somewhere new. Like unless they've got this idea, like I'm going to go do this today, right? And I mean and to the people that maybe are like, gosh, like I feel like I only flip and that's only what I do. Like I don't know about you, but to get comfortable with those other things, that's what I did. I was like, man, I'm not good at drop shotting. Like, I'm going to go to, like, whitefish, and I'm going to drop shot fish all day.
Yeah.
And that's just what I did.
Right.
Like, I mean,
Right.
I did that a lot growing up. Like, man, like, all I did with the spinning rod was jig worm and throw a wacky rig. So it's like, man, I got to go figure something out here. I need to do a couple more things with the spinning rod, you know?
Yeah.
So it was like, it wasn't necessarily like I'm going to, you know, go to my favorite lake and fish my favorite spots. It was like, I'm going to go fish this drop shot. I'm going to go to some place that might be good to do it. I'm going to go try doing these things, and I'm just going to fish this everywhere I go today.
I think that's a lot harder to do for people than, like, a lot of people want to get better at fishing, but a lot of people aren't willing to sacrifice that precious time they have off, right, from work
Sure.
to potentially suck at
Yeah.
a new technique they haven't learned before versus like, hey, this is like, I only have 2 days this week, you know,
Yeah.
and I want to catch everything, right?
Well, that's why you got the little hole by the access. Like, when on your way in, you need like 30 minutes, little pick-me-up to go sling the jig in and catch a couple, right? Like, yeah, you got that too.
But it's hard to do, right? When you know you can go catch them a certain way, it's hard to get out of that track. But
Certainly.
forcing yourself to do that, you have to be mad enough at them to do it.
Yeah, you got to, like, for me, it was getting beat enough, right? It was like, you know,
I'm sick of
like,
getting
I can't, as much as I want to catch them on a jig every day, I can't. Like, this isn't the best tool every day. So I need to figure a couple other things out.
Was the main key to that the rise of the Pokegama smallmouth? Was that kind of like
The drop shot?
like you like kind of like learning and adapting? Was it the evolution of the Pokegama smallmouth?
It
that
was-
kind of like
It was
caused that.
It was smallmouth
feel like
for sure.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was when the smelt died out there.
Sure.
So before the smelt died, like, we had something figured out. I mean, you know, from Chapman, what we were doing out there.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure you do. He
Maybe.
throws a pink one all the time.
Oh yeah, fluking.
Yeah. You know, so we had a fluke thing
Yeah,
figured
that's all
out.
Chapman does is fluke.
Yeah, well,
No, he does some more shit, but
he fished one up there with me one spring, and we were catching him on a fluke in practice. Pretty good. But anyways, yeah, like, when that bite died, because, like, the smelt died, and it's just like, it still happens, but it's non-existent compared to what it was. It was like the most special thing you've ever seen. So cool. Like, you throw your fluke out there in 20 feet of water, and you look underneath it, and there'd just be a ball of bronze just, like, fighting underneath your fluke. And it's like, they're all 4-pounders. Dude, it was so cool. And, like, you might throw it for 3 hours before you saw one, but all of a sudden you look, you're like, oh my gosh, there they are. And they're like, chaos, you know,
Wow.
just chaos.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cool. Anyways, that's done. Like, I haven't seen it happen for at least 15 years. Like, it just doesn't happen. So, but yeah, that's what we used to do. And when that went away, like, the power fishing thing was kind of gone, because it's not like they eat a ton of crayfish on the rocks out there. Like, you know, you can get a little bit of that going. So, like
sunny day it seems like.
you
those
can get a little
times,
bit of that going, but it's
yeah.
like, finesse is more of kind of the style. And that's
For sure.
Yeah, I would say it was a lot of Pokegama, you know, the tough days of gull and whitefish and Lahamadou, like, when they were tougher.
Yep.
There was
Summertime.
there was a time there where the weights were tough out there. There wasn't a ton of big fish that were being caught. They might have been there, right? But
Right.
yeah, so yeah, spinning rod was like my thing, and it was like, drop shot was, I remember, like, that was, I spent a lot of time drop shotting. And then on the jig worm, like, I threw one jig worm, and then I remember one day, like, just looking over to the side of the boat and being like, well, that guy's throwing like a Senko on his jig head jig worm, and I did not throw that.
That
like,
was a deal. That was a.
That's
dude,
a
that
thing,
was
right?
Dude, that was a tournament winning secret for. I mean, when I got in on that, there was guys like, it was like the deal that, like, Shane and those guys were winning everything.
and
on.
I had no idea, because I threw a ribbon tail. Like, I threw a 7-inch culprit or 7-inch power worm. Like, that's kind of what I went with. And fished it the exact same way these guys threw the Senko one. Like,
Yep.
I really wasn't moving it
Yep.
much, you know, like,
Yep.
kind of getting it where I wanted to be and to shake it a little bit.
Mhm.
But then I realized, like, oh man, these guys are throwing like a Senko. So it just opened up my idea of, well, what other kind of worms can you throw on this sucker? Like, what other kind of baits
Right.
can you put on this thing? So that's kind of like where it all started for me. Was I saw someone throwing a different kind of worm, and I was like, what? You know, and I like growing up, like you throw a jig head and a grub all the time. Like, of course you can put whatever you want on a jig head. Like,
Right.
put a swim bait on there all the time too. Like, I don't know why I didn't think of putting other stuff on a jig head, but sure enough, the jig worm evolved, and that's like a huge staple of what I still use today when I finesse fish.
Same, dude. And like, I'll never forget where I learned that jigworm Senko deal. It was from Nick Gross on Lake Minnewaska, and
Sure.
he was a pro in the Silverados, and I was an am, but I would practice with him, and we didn't go to any of his stuff, but yeah, I was throwing that jigworm Senko.
Yeah.
Like, that was the deal. And I remember I drew a pro, and he had taken last place on Lahamadou the tournament before, and I'm like, crap. Kind of like, you know how it goes.
Yep.
But he was a good guy, and he ended up finding, you know, he was around him, right?
Yeah.
And he threw a jig all day. And I can't say this happened very often, but this was one of those magic lures, right? And I caught every one of our bass that day out of the back, just soaking that thing. And Shane won on the same lure.
Yep.
And we took second that day. It's Silverado, big deal.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I think Nick went on to win the next 5 tournaments he fished on Lake Minnewaska with that bait.
Worming. Yep.
Yeah. Like the jigworm Senko. Like, and like I go to Tonka, I could catch him on it. And now I just don't catch him on it as good. But
I did really good last year on Tonka with the jigworm.
me too. Just not the 5-inch.
No, it's not the same
Like,
jigworm.
it's not
And
the
I'm not
same-
catching
yeah.
the same big ones
Like-
as I used to. I caught a bunch of fish on it again, which was cool. Like, I haven't caught fish on it like that for a long time, but it
Dude,
was nothing that mattered. Like, I'm okay talking about it. It was fine.
That got my brain like, so then I go up to Gull, and this is like zebra mussels are just starting
Yeah.
to go, and that jigworm is the deal. I'm like, I wonder if I tried a 6-inch jigworm Senko, and I put it on a baitcaster. And I remember Hatton and I had like second that tournament,
Yeah.
and he went on, and he won a tournament after that, I think, on it.
Yeah.
But it was like soaking that bigger jigworm on a Senko, just like the littler one. And
Yeah.
I think because no one was doing it, and those fish were still a little fresh, like,
Yeah.
man, those were good days. Like, but I didn't invent that. I was shown that.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
I didn't know it was kicking my ass for so long, but I was shown it, and then I started to kick some ass.
It was, yeah.
It was one of those deals.
Or the first time a Senko.
And the jigworm slug.
Well, that just reminds me of the first time I saw a Senko being used. So this was, like, again, they must have been out for a long time. This is in the 90s.
90s Senko,
Yep.
baby.
Yep. And we're on the dock at my grandma's, White Sand Lake, with one of my buddies from school, in middle school. And, like, the wind was just howling in, and he was throwing a Senko, and I'd never seen this thing before. And he's throwing it out there, and he's, like, just sitting there. He's not doing anything. And he's
Right.
just jerking real fish, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, it just sits there and sinks to the bottom. He's like, yeah. It's like, well, what happens when it gets to the bottom? He's like, well, they maybe eat it off bottom. So, that's kind of lame. So I put one under a bobber, wacky rigged it under a bobber, just put it halfway down, threw it out there, and let the wind drift it in. I caught him just as good as him.
I believe that.
And I was like, I need to buy some of whatever this is. Like,
Yeah.
I've never caught bass like this before. So then, like, and how I didn't put it on a jig head right after that, like, it took me years to kind of get to that next phase of, like, let's rig this a different way.
Right.
You know? No, I was weightless Senko shoot, that was my 6th through 9th grade.
Dude, why don't we bobber fish more?
I do a fair amount.
For bass?
No.
That's
No,
what I'm
my daughter
saying.
likes to panfish and walleye fish, and yeah.
This is just a thought that just popped in my head right now. Why the fuck? You know, Gussie's one shit Demikiing.
Yeah.
Why don't you Demiki a bar? Like, why don't bass? Because, like, so Dean and Leslie talked to me about something, and, like, milfoil, right? You get a flip and bite going in milfoil when it's sunny, right? And then it's cloudy tournament day. Well, those guys would wacky Senko
Yeah.
under bobbers. Like, he's probably pissed at me for saying this, but if someone's crazy enough to fucking do it nowadays, props.
That's what I was doing.
I know it works, and I'm wondering, like, I don't feel like that has been experimented with enough, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
For bass. That.
I mean, they do a little bit with like the float and fly, right?
Yeah, but does anybody do that on Tonka?
I don't think so.
I feel like it'd work then.
I mean, I've heard rumors of people using live bait out there.
I feel like because no one's doing it, it would fucking work.
Yeah.
Bobber a
Maybe.
fucking jigworm Senko or something like. Like
Probably.
this is us working through something right now.
Probably.
You're the type of guy who would fuck with that. I want you to fuck with that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm having flashbacks.
What
to some
would you
stuff
bobber?
I've seen. What would I put under the bobber
Yeah, if you like, let's go to Tonka tomorrow. What would you put under a bobber?
to catch a bass?
Yeah, that's not live.
Something small, like a lot smaller than most people would put
3-inch
on.
Senko?
Smaller. I'd use like a 2.5 inch like critter of some sort, like a bug.
Raid 2-way from Waypoint Angler Supply.
Something from there, but certainly not that thing that would probably fall off my hook when I casted it. I'm not a fan of that, the way that thing rigs. I'd use something more bulky, like a little bit bulkier, but still pretty dainty. So it's something that the bluegill's not going to peck at. Like that's kind of what my go-to. Like I'd use, a jig head, and I put it under that bobber, and I'd put something on there that sat horizontal that looked something like a cricket of some sort.
Yeah, I get it. I get what you're putting down.
But
like,
something like,
what about in
again,
July out there?
the way I like to bobber fish for every species, I want something that like it stays on that hook. I don't want anything super finesse like that. I think the more we're talking about this, the more I realize I'm a power fisherman at heart.
You are.
I'm gonna rip that thing
It was a
through
trick
that
question.
milfoil so hard. Like
I was
if it's
waiting
not,
for you to say, does the bobber have a rattle in it?
If
Can,
it's
can
not-
I shave the bobber into a popping mechanism?
if it's not super,
Can I make the
glued
bobber
on-
walk the dog?
Yeah, is it a popping cork? Like
yeah,
that's a saltwater
can
deal.
I
I'll do that.
make a line through with my spook and use that as a bobber?
Yeah, yep, that's it. Like, can the bobber actually be a big popper?
A line through spook with a marabou jig behind it.
Something like that. I was gonna say dragging a Senko, just a huge like 5-inch
that work?
pop R.
I feel like there's a lot of untapped realm to bass and their attitude, as pressured ones especially.
I've
And
heard
I had
some
light
weird
bulb
rumors.
moments the past year, and it's like it makes me just wonder. Like, you got a pressured school on Tonka.
Yeah.
I wonder if you slip bobber them motherfuckers with a 3-inch wacky rigged Yamameta Senka. If
Probably
you catch
catch one.
2 of them.
Yeah,
Which is what everybody else is catching out of each school.
Yeah,
So
no.
if you could catch 2 quicker.
the more I
If I just gave everybody juice, so be it, because I've never tried it. But I'd be curious.
the more I fish and the more you experience things, the more you realize that there really isn't a wrong way to do anything. And I
Right.
promise you can catch fish doing that. Like, no matter what you tie on there, if it's got a sharp hook with a point, like, you can catch something. It does not so much matter what it is. It's more what you got confidence in, what you're doing with it, where you're putting it.
Right.
Like when you believe you're going to get bit on it, you'll get bit on it twice as good.
Totally. But it's weird bobber thoughts like that are like the demise of me as an angler, but also like that shining light,
I'd say it's a shining light. There's no wrong answers, man. Those are good ideas. All ideas are good. Because
Till-
even if it
till-
doesn't work as the bobber and you're like, well, maybe I just got to try something a little different, and it gets you to that next idea.
This is true.
You know
This
what I
is true.
mean?
Yep. Dude, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you're developing that.
Yeah.
It's a development, just like anything.
Yep.
I still can't catch them on an A-rig like you, though.
Yeah,
And that is something I'm just like, I told myself I was going to throw it a bunch, and I threw it more than I did last year, but I probably didn't still throw it enough because I caught, this is how it worked for glide baits and A-rig for me, which was 2 baits I was going to fuck with this year. I caught real nice walleyes. That was
Yeah.
my experience with A-rigs and glide baits this year. So,
the walleyes don't, like, they like an A-rig. They don't.
and a glide bait.
They don't hesitate. I haven't really thrown a glide bait much, but
caught some big fucking walleyes on
Sure.
an A-rig and a glide bait, and I caught some bass on it too, but what is the deal with some of that? Do you think you just need to lock that shit in your hand longer, or like
Partially.
because I know
Yeah.
you're I know you're not a glider, but I know you're a rigger.
Mm-hmm.
Big
Yeah.
rigger.
Yeah, this last year was probably a little bit tougher. I've lost a little bit of confidence in it. But I also figured a few things out. I think there's a lot more variables to each piece and component on that A-rig every day. You know what I mean? Like the weight of your jig heads, the size of your jig edge, the size of your swim baits, the colors. And live scopes probably hurt my confidence a little bit in it because I can watch them look at it and not bite it at
Right.
times. You
For
know what I
me,
mean?
That's 100% it
That's
for me.
killed me a little bit. But yeah, I do believe that I maybe was missing a couple keys before this year has passed, right? So I think if I could redo this year, I could probably catch more on it in those couple situations that I saw that I thought it would have worked well and it didn't. But yeah, man, that's a tool for sure. Like it is a tool.
Did you ever mess with that one I showed you? That
No,
okay.
no.
I want to mess with that more, man.
Yeah, the one you got sitting on the deck still?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Looks sweet.
it does. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, especially with smallmouth and being the way that they feed and just,
Right.
they're chasing food all the time. So,
Yeah, dude. Like the fact that they're like most rigs got a wire arm.
yeah. A little more subtle.
I don't know, man. I don't get that A-rig thing.
Well, I'd like-
Schlapper fucks them up on it. There's so many people who just mess them up on that thing. I do not. I've had some moments, but like Connor O'Connor would be laughing right now. He's like, I fuck him up on that all the time.
The lake that he goes to is a really good one for that.
That makes sense.
It's like one of the best.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I haven't gone there as much lately since I've started trying to throw the rig more, so
Yep.
that makes sense.
And then, yeah, there's another one not far north of there that's pretty good too.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
I could see that.
yeah, there's places that it's like the thing to do, and then there's other places that it's just a good tool.
I feel like there's a time of day where they eat it. It's that kind of deal. Like, oh, they're eating an A-rig in the morning, and then you don't catch like any more on it all day.
Usually, yeah.
Like,
when
when
it's
they're
not
doing the
right.
deal?
When it's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they're doing the deal, the rig's the deal.
Yeah.
But when they're not, like,
Yep.
it's not.
Yep. Got it exactly.
I feel like sometimes it's just too much. Like on Vermilion, I noticed that
Yeah.
in practice. Like where pre-spawn, I thought I was going to fuck them up on an A-rig pretty good on like Vermilion, and I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know what that's
and
about.
I think it like spooked him up, and like you throw a jerk bait or you throw something like that, and it.
I've never
like,
caught
it
him
worked.
as good pre-spawn on it. I don't know why.
Guys, you hear about guys catch them on the bay on it, and like, Sturgeon Bay,
Yeah.
people winning the bay open on it. But I feel like that's a wind deal, very specific.
Yeah, you gotta
kinda
find the-
conditions.
yep.
And with warm water and wind and
For whatever reason, like spring, I'd rather throw a jerk bait,
same, same.
or the fluff.
Yeah, yeah. But you're a guy who's lived and died on the rig. A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of. Not really.
Fair enough.
1 day. 2 days.
Couple days.
But both times I'd say were fairly livable. So,
For sure livable.
yeah.
But it's like, how do you know when to do that? That's the hard thing for me.
That, I don't know. We were talking earlier about putting your intentions out there and that like sense of calming and security and not caring and just being like, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it and this is what it's going to be. That was very much one of those days.
So like you had the A-rig next to your pillow that night?
No,
and
we
you were,
practiced
like,
a week before. Went out there on like Saturday. Keith likes to go early, so we got out there early. And after about 45 minutes of fishing, he looked at me and said, "You have to put that thing down. Like you got to put that fucking thing down. You can't throw it again." It's like, "Okay, noted." And I didn't catch a fish for like 5 hours. And I looked at him. I was like, "Can I throw it again?" He's like, "Yeah, you can throw it again." And I caught like a 5 something. Like it was big. Like I want to say like a 514. He's like, all right, put it back down. I was like, all right. Never really caught anything the rest of the day, and we went back to the Axis. It's like, well, I know what I'm doing all day. Like, I'm doing it.
No,
you know? And then we got there in the morning, and like within 5 minutes, like I had caught 3, maybe 10 minutes. Like, you know, we get to the first little school of them, and it's like 1, 2, 3 casts in a row.
Damn.
You know? And then like by this point, I was like, oh yeah, like it's gonna happen, right? And it just never slowed down all day. So like it didn't really give me a chance to doubt it.
Yep.
But like I was so confident going into it that like I probably had a couple hours before I was really going to doubt it anyways. So like there was plenty of time to go for it. But yeah, like there was no looking back. Like it was what it was. And then the other time that I did it, it was on a whitefish tournament. I locked it in my hands and didn't catch anything on it until like the storm hit, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
In a lightning storm.
Yeah. And then like
How do you keep throwing it all day? Like,
I mean, I mixed in a shower blows too. I'll be honest with you. Throwing 2 things.
great top water.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was doing. I threw those 2 things all day, and yeah,
Got him.
not really. I got enough.
All you need is 5, bro.
Yeah,
Yep. And it's weird how I can do that with certain techniques and not others. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who say the same thing, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, for some reason, like the way smallmouth are attracted to stuff, and I call it the chandelier. I'm like, I have a hard time not throwing that big thing.
Totally. This podcast is brought to you by my compadre, my tournament partner, my brother, and the best rod builder above the Mason-Dixon line, Veselka Fishing and Customs. Specializing in custom fishing rods. That's right. Hand-built fishing rods, custom-made and tailored how you want, whether it's by length, action, specific technique, balance, or anything you want. Anything. Veselka Fishing and Customs can build it. Mr. Veselka also has a wide variety of rods to choose from, which we've had a lot of fun with, perfecting and testing. The most unique and famous rod developed at Veselka Fishing and Customs is his custom marabou hair jig rod. Have you thrown the old Canadian dinner mint, the Harry Gary, the fighter fly, the old thin Lizzie? If you have, then you know these little fluff balls can be hard to cast, especially at those key sizes as light as 1/16 of an ounce. Well, what if I told you you could cast that marabou jig 30 to 50% farther than you're casting it now? What if I told you you don't have to spook those shallow, skittish smallmouth? Well, with the custom hair jig rod from Veselka Fishing and Customs, not only can you cast a lot further, but the way this rod loads up on a long cast is pure perfection. This balanced rod has the perfect backbone with a light action parabolic taper that keeps those fish pinned without breaking your line. Mr. Veselka utilizes an 8-foot custom fly fishing blank converted to a spinning rod and couples it with premium guides leading up to custom fly guides that allow maximized casting distance and reduced line friction and blank slap, maximizing your overall performance, obviously. And we found this rod is not only perfect for marabou hair jigs, but for any light bait you need to cast far, including small swim baits, spy baits, and more. Any light bait you need to cast far, look no further than the Veselka Fishing and Customs Hair Jig Special. So head on over to his website, veselkafishing.com. That's VOCELKA fishing.com. And treat yourself to the custom hair jig rod or any custom rod you can dream up. With the JDM tackle craze in full force, there's been a lot of hype around the new tackle shop, Waypoint Angler Supply, and their unique selection of intergalactic fishing equipment. But don't forget about your everyday Bassin needs, whether it's hooks, weights, fishing line, tackle storage, reels, rods, craw tubes, beavers, jigs, spinner baits, jackhammers, frogs. You never have to pay full price again. There's not that many places that will give you 20% off a new Shimano reel or a new Veselka rod. On a big ticket item like that, 20% savings is a good chunk of change. You can then take that 20% and put some gas in your boat, or you can take that 20% you saved and put it into a Roth IRA. Warren Buffett that shit, which in a year's time, you just paid for that new rod and reel. It's simple math and science. As a bastronaut in the Bass Galaxy, you can save 20% on all the stuff you use every day at Waypoint Angler Supply. Do you ice fish? Do you do the ice Dougie? Do you do the ice fishing? Well, you can knock 20% off all your ice season goodies at Waypoint Angler Supply too. Who's got you covered no matter the season? So stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. Use the code Galaxy20 to save 20% on all your everyday tackle needs, ladies and gentlemen. I have a hard time throwing it.
And I prefer it with one hook.
Well, yeah, it's legal.
But, like, you can go to Canada, throw it with 4 hooks. You can go down in Alabama, throw it with 5. Missouri, you can throw it with 5. I throw it with 1 hook usually.
No matter what?
Yeah, I like it with 1.
Why?
It gets hung less.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep, like
Yep.
it comes through stuff really good, and I haven't used it for largemouth as much.
Yep.
But I threw it a lot on Pekegama when I was up there.
Yep.
And like caught plenty of largemouth on it, and they all hit that same one I wanted them to hit every time. And I could switch it from the middle. Like, it didn't really matter where I put it.
Yeah.
I could get them to bite the one I wanted them to bite. So, like, unless it's multiple, I'm sure that's something different, right? But I can't say I've ever experienced that. Yeah.
You and your fucking chartreuse. I love it. That's
yeah.
That's the
So
thing.
yeah, that's the way I prefer to throw it. So yeah, I think it's a good tool, and I kind of do it my own way.
You seen them guys that like throw the big weight on one arm to dredge it? Like,
Sure.
To me, that would be a way you could throw 4 hooks and have it be. I guess if you're throwing it through brush, you're still fucked. But
Yeah, like the first place I ever played with them, like outside of Pekegama, because I was living in Grand Rapids when like they kind of got popular, is Keith and I were going down to Table Rock, and like I had a really fun time catching spots on it, like on bluff walls through timber, and
Yep.
But I realized pretty quick that like it's not fun throwing near stuff, and you kind of got to get it near stuff.
yeah,
Like,
that's what I've heard.
It's a big drawing factor. Like, it looks like it, but it doesn't draw them very far. Like, you got to kind of, like, just like a spinnerbait, fish it.
Yeah, bang it into something.
Yeah.
That's a nugget.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, yeah,
That's a nugget.
so, yeah, I take as many hooks off there as possible and fish it like a spinnerbait.
Interesting. And talking to Table Rock guys, like they always say, if you're gonna throw a rig, make sure you use light wire hooks.
Sure.
Because when you get it hung, you don't want to lose the whole fucking.
You don't lose the rig. Yeah, sure.
But it's because you want to bang it into shit.
And guides, I'm
we
sure.
Squareville down here, boy.
Yeah.
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 I don't feel like it's a hard game up here because we've got a lot of soft cover.
Yeah.
And it's like a crankbait. I feel like that's why a lot of us don't fish a crankbait up here, is because soft cover just seems to be more difficult.
How do you do it on soft cover?
Just a little different than hard cover.
But basically the same?
Basically the same.
Yeah.
Yep, it's just figuring out the rod reel combo.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
And we were talking about a chatterbait earlier, and Dane and I were talking about this a bunch. He's got a rod that is just an awesome chatterbait rod, but it's like if you fish, it depends how you fish a chatterbait, or maybe what time of year you're fishing a chatterbait,
Sure.
or what kind of cover. It's like you talk to Keith Tuma on how he's fishing a chatterbait.
Yeah.
It's like that rod ain't gonna work for that. But if you talk to how you fish chatterbait with like straight fluorocarbon and getting it through grass,
Yeah.
like the rod's got to be a little bit different system than if you're not throwing it on
Yeah.
fluorocarbon.
For
Or
sure.
if you're fishing a chatterbait like a jig more so, or a blade bait, you do want a little bit different action maybe than if you're reeling it. I don't know.
Maybe.
Like just like a lipless crankbait, I think there's an art to that too. Like when them guys are yo-yoing it
Yeah.
on Gunnersville in the spring versus like reeling it like closer to spawn.
I would agree.
That's
You got to kind
wild.
of find the right rod for that. But I've also noticed like I used to be the guy that would switch rods for, like you're saying, for application. Like maybe I'm throwing a chatterbait in the pencil reeds. I'm gonna throw it on braid, right? And then I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna go throw it out in the cabbage. Then I'm gonna throw it on fluoro.
Sure.
You know, like maybe that would be what I was doing. And what I've now gotten more comfortable with is just using that same rod and just it's with the chatterbait especially, but just that intimacy of knowing what everything feels like with one line, one rod, one lure. You know what everything feels like.
Sure.
And I got to a point where I could tell bites that I'd never thought were bites before, like oh, that's a weed, and before, and now it's like, well, that's for sure a fish.
Yep.
I didn't hook it even, and I'll throw back there and get it to bite the next cast. Same exact spot. You're like, like the blade just chimed maybe a little bit different, right? And you're like, like that wasn't weeds. I know that feel.
Yeah.
But like until you get so intimate and throw thousands of casts with that setup, you don't feel those things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like
I do not. I don't know
with
if
other rods.
I'm not as intimate with the chatterbait,
but with
as
other
you,
rods, like there's the
my
certain
tube rod's
point.
that way.
Exactly. Like you can lift it up and feel spongy and know if it's a weed or a fish, and like you never felt anything. You just know it's spongy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Vothelka Fishing and Customs tube rod, I can feel everything. Dude, yes. Intimacy. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So I've kind of gotten away from like trying to switch things up with rods. I just kind of keep certain rods for certain techniques, and the times of the year that might change, right? Like spring is like a fluoro rod, and then in the summer I'm going to use this as a braid rod, and then in the fall maybe I'll come back to a fluoro rod. But like for those few weeks, it's what it is.
Yep.
And like in my chatterbait rod does not change. Like I tried the key thing with braid, and he can have it. It's his.
I like it. I got 2 chatterbait rods for that reason.
I've got 2 with fluoro on them again.
I like that too. And it's interesting. It's such a...
It's completely different, right?
Chatterbaits, it's like you can get a rod. You want the rod to be spongy, but like if it's too spongy, I hate it. And there's guys that like a rod that's really, really spongy, and the only time I'll take that is on the braid tuna thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the only time I've been able to deal with it. But there's guys who like a really spongy, too spongy in my opinion, for like a chatter with fluorocarbon. And maybe it's just because the old thunder and lightning here,
Right.
Ain't the thunder and lightning that the other guys got, on the old buys and tries.
Or maybe it's too much.
Or maybe it's just it's too much power.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's where I thought you were coming from.
Or maybe I'm not ripping on the right slack, or,
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuances to it. And I guarantee if you ask the crowd, and Dane's talked about this before, like how many different fucking perfect chatterbait rods there are in the fucking land.
How many fishermen are there?
Billions.
There's that many different perfect chatterbait rods.
Why is that? It's not that way with any other rod, I swear to God.
To each is their own, man. I don't know.
Whatever, man.
Yep. I don't know. I'm a fan of the sponge. I throw like a glass rod, but it's a fairly stiff one. It's a heavy power glass.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I like glass if it's heavy enough.
Yeah.
Or else there's got to be braid on there.
Yeah, I struggled with the braid for whatever reason. It's just so responsive, right? Like you feel so much more.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, like that enhanced like sense of just everything, like the feel, like everything was enhanced. I think I was fishing it too fast. Like you feel it so crisp, and you just like snap it harder, and you're doing everything just more because it feels so good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You just feel it, and like when it's on that fluoro, it's like you really got to feel for it. You know what I mean? So you're just kind of feathering it through stuff, and it's more subtle.
It's a hard bait to fish slow. You really have to focus on fishing that bait slow, in my opinion. If you're not like jigging it, if you're just reeling a chatterbait, I think it's way too easy to reel it too fast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe.
For me.
Maybe. We both know somebody that likes to crank that thing, so.
Yeah. Like, with a trailer that I have not figured out yet,
Man.
but
I think that's why it works for him.
for sure.
He's the only one.
I got a few things like that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, there's
We
some
all
stuff
have
on the
a few.
wall back here that's like, what? You're the only person in Minnesota that owns this.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
No, you could go the same to my tackle room. Be like, what are you doing?
I love it. And it's like Matt Thompson brought up, like, because no one else will. Like, right? And
Sure.
There's something, and it's not necessarily always no one else will. It's maybe because no one else has, or maybe,
Yeah.
nobody's thought about it like this before. Like, you've brought up a few things, like with the buzz bait, where I'm like, I never really thought about it like that before. And I can think of a lot of things that way. Something that flips, it falls different,
Yeah, that's what's so fun about this game is like you can look at it from so many different sides and angles, and there is nothing that's wrong. It's fishing. Like, you go into a tackle shop sometime and look at all the stuff you would never buy.
Yeah,
ever.
dude.
That stuff sells, and people catch fish on it every day.
And it blows my mind.
Right. That's what's so cool about this is like there is no wrong way.
Right.
And no one's ever gonna catch the 5 biggest bass in the lake ever on any given day. So like everything is an option. Everything's wide open. Like you're never defeated. It's all open and it's all possible. It's such a fun sport.
We live in a fantasy world.
Totally.
We live in a fantasy world, Andy.
Yeah.
And tournament anglers live in a fantasy world of never-ending loss.
Never-ending loss?
Yeah. If you look at results, the tournament fishing is the losingest sport in the world. But it's a fantasy world. If we didn't tournament fish, that's all it would be. Maybe.
It's something.
Maybe I'm on a different planet of intergalactic
No,
thought
I mean,
here, but
typically.
most of the time.
Yeah, typically.
Most of the time.
Like, yeah.
Most of the time. Most of the time.
Maybe. I don't know. Tournament fishing something else. It's the farther I get into it and the deeper I go, the more I realize that like as narrow-minded as my view is, like everyone's got their own little tunnel view of that and no two look the same.
Yeah.
No two. Like everyone and nobody's wrong. Like nobody.
No, and oh man, dude, you just made me think of like the wildest shit. This to me is the full like embodiment of like the most pure tournament angler ever. It's John Cox. I've maybe told you this over
He's the man.
phone.
Yeah.
But I've been told 2 stories about John Cox that are like impressive to me because I think that fishing is a double-edged sword and a lot of people ride their double-edged sword, and the people that are great at the sport, they know where the other edge of the sword is and when they need to switch to a different weapon.
Correct. Yeah.
And this would be a prime example of that. So George Little told me this story about John Cox, and 2 stories, 2 different lakes.
Okay.
One of them bull shoals, clear, spooky, skittish, shad chasing largemouth in spots, right? Like hard to fool a bass on Bull Shoals Lake.
Mm-hmm.
Very spooky. And if you were to talk to a guy who fishes Bull Shoals Lake, he would tell you if you want to catch a winning sack, you need to like reel something by him pretty fast this time of year out there. Well, John Cox fucks him up on a Senko one day, and everybody's like, nobody's catching them on a Senko right now, John Cox. Like, what? And how he was catching these fish on the main river with a weightless Senko just blew my mind because I never thought about it this way. But this is what makes great anglers great, in my opinion. And we've had conversations about similar light bulb-like moments, but the whole day he caught a big bag on Bull Shoals throwing this weightless Senko. he didn't put the trolling motor in the water one time. Can you imagine going to Bull Shoals Lake and putting your boat into Bull Shoals Lake and saying, "Hey, we need to go catch some bass today. What are we gonna fucking do today?" Well, if you're John Cox, you put your boat in the water and you say, "Well, I've got this wacky Senko on the deck from wherever the hell last
From 3
week,
months
right?
ago."
But I'm on Bull Shoals Lake right now, and I need to catch a bass, and I need to catch big ones. And all I got is this Senko rigged up. He literally would shut the engine off like 100 feet before he gets to the spot, and boat is like coasting in. He gets on the front deck, bomb casts that Senko. There's no
Yep.
my trolling motor's in the water now.
Yep.
Like those fish are used to hearing, feeling,
Yeah.
seeing every time they're about to get caught, right?
Yeah.
Everything those fish are conditioned to
Just silently
in that clear
bomb it.
water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucks them up.
Yep.
A wacky Senko, weightless Senko, makes it look easy. It's like, I don't even need to put the trolling motor in the water, right? It's like, wow, that dude is stealthy. And then George tells me this story after that. And it's on like Ozarks. John Cox. And he top 10 this event out there or something. And, Ozarks, big dock lake, right?
Yep.
And he's, day one of practice, he like gets his jig hung on a dock and like kind of lazily brings his boat into the dock, and all of a sudden his boat bangs into the dock. And all of a sudden he watches like a 3.5 pounder and a 5 pounder like scatter out of the dock. And most people would be like, "Oh, fuck, I fucking spooked him," right? What does John Cox do? The rest of practice?
Runs into docks.
Fucking bumps his boat into docks. Rams it into him.
Let me see what's under this one.
Yeah. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, because John Cox rammed more boat docks than everybody else, he found the most productive boat docks.
He knew the best stretches, yeah.
Yeah. And I think there was also a scenario where he spooked him out to catch him. But
Sure.
he's that good. But, like, talk about two ends of the spectrum, same guy,
Yeah.
same style of fishing, just instinctively
Yeah.
understanding
How to make it work.
how to make it work and doing like thinking outside the box,
Yeah.
but not overthinking himself crazy about how he's going to catch. No, I got wacky Senko on the deck. They're just skittish. So
Yeah.
I'm just not going to spook them.
Yeah. Stay real far away, be real quiet. Don't
Like-
even put the troller in the water.
Don't even
Great.
put the trolling motor in the water. It's like, what the fuck? That was mind blowing to me, and I just like fishing's wild, man. It's a galaxy.
It's something
Fucking
else.
solar system, dude.
Well,
Cole, how are we doing for time?
you call it.
Hey, dude, when we're done, we're done. There's no time limit.
Whatever.
Hey,
I know there's no limits in the galaxy. You always say that.
There's no limits in the galaxy. But like, dude, this was epic. I mean, what's on the horizon for you?
I don't know yet. I really don't. Just
You're
gonna keep
silent
fishing.
fucking killer.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it, dude.
I got a big goal someday to go somewhere and do something, but until then I just want to keep fishing, keep having fun, keep learning. And there's nothing better. Like I'm one of the ones that's just I'm sick for tournament fishing. There is nothing more fun that I can do as an extracurricular activity outside my life. Like outside of my house, there's nothing I can do that beats tournament fishing. There's nothing. Like it is my number one. And like for just to go like have fun. Like if my time off, that's what I'm going to pick. And like I want to get back and see the guys in the morning. Like it's one of the things I really miss. So I'm going to try to jump into a couple this summer. Just local stuff, maybe try to fish one of the opens coming close to us. Like there are a couple. I'm kind of busy during the one I really want to fish, but
Beach.
lacrosse is kind of cool. So,
Lacrosse is cool.
you know, it would be fun to fish just something on that level. Like coming from Minnesota, a lot of us really don't know what that's even like, right?
I know, right?
Like
Yeah.
it's a whole different experience fishing those 200 plus boat deals, multiple day events. Like it's something else, and I would just love to experience it a little bit more and
Same, dude.
just get a feel for it a little bit more before I kind of make the plunge. But you know, I'm not scared. Like if I don't get the chance, I don't get the chance. I'll still do it when it's time's right.
I'm not scared either, but it's like the time's got to be right? And it's like financially, I'm not in the spot to be doing that, especially after the awful tournament season I had last year.
Right, yeah.
You know, so it's one of those things where, but then like you talk to a Bob Downey and it's like, or anybody, I mean, when is the right time?
I was just gonna say, when is it ever really
You'll
right?
always find an
You could-
excuse not to do it.
You
right?
can easily, right? So
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the plan, is to have fun around home,
I
fish
like
with
that.
fish with friends, have fun, fish some tournaments, you know, see where the wind takes me. Like I've always
Yeah.
kind of been that way about fishing, especially is like whatever, like whatever. If I'm not doing anything that weekend and there's a tournament that catches my eye, like I don't care if I've been there or not, I'll show up.
I like that about you. That's a hard thing to do, in my opinion. Really hard thing to do. What about the youth coming up? What do you think about the youth coming up? And is it different than like when we came up? It seems like
Man, it's way different. I would say, like, this is a very one-sided opinion, and I very well could be wrong. But when I was growing up and we were growing up, fishing was a lot less popular, like less
For
cool.
sure.
I don't know
Yeah.
what words we want to use, but
both of those.
yeah, like, so I believe right now, and I'm hopeful that a lot of these kids stick to it, but I believe there's a giant influx of kids into the fishing industry that enjoy the heck out of it through their high school years. Starts in like middle school now, if I'm correct.
think so.
Like
Yep.
6th to 8th grade range, but they enjoy it through high school. And then once you get to that high school level, it's about the same that carries forward, like to that next college that might have some, but you really start weeding through a lot of the guys.
Yeah, it
But the
thins
same
out.
amount are carrying forward that did when we did.
Yep.
It's just they have this giant platform to enjoy for like 6-8 years before that's gone. That if we wanted to enjoy it, I had to get $250 my own dollars and $250 my buddy's dollars to enter in to go fish the tournament on July 12th
Against a bunch of 40-year-olds.
But guys that you're scared of. Like
Yeah.
these guys have been winning a long time. Like that was your option. So
That's,
I think
a big difference.
so I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of kids enjoying it and kind of feeling it out, and I think it's giving more people the opportunity to experience it. So there's probably a few more, but at the tail end, like I'm not seeing. There's not many more kids that are 30 years old with bass boats, or 25. That's probably more realistic. These high school kids, like, there's not that many more than there was when I was that age. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
few, but not that many more.
Right.
It seems to kind of like it falls off. Like not everyone's gonna do it forever, right?
But what I'm
At that
curious
level.
about is, so you know how like walleye fishing is
Yeah.
in the state, like very loose,
Yeah.
so to speak. Like it's not like bass fishing. I don't think like everybody walleye fishes at their cabin up here.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? And I'm curious, like, if this generation of bass fishermen, yes, it thins out, but like, what about when they, is there a leisurely bass angler, demographic that will come up now because of this high school angler? Yeah, maybe they're not like,
Yeah.
maybe there's the same amount of like super serious.
It's more accepted. I
Yeah,
will
where
agree.
maybe there's a mainstream, darter in the garbage, mainstream accepted, like, less serious bass fisherman that becomes a really popular thing once these high school kids do get older, because we didn't see those sheer numbers of participants when we were younger.
So I believe that it's all true. Like you're just gonna have more leisurely fishermen as well. And the reason I say that, bass fishermen, I should specify. I say that is I used to work up in Grand Rapids managing a retail store, sold fish
Yeah.
and stuff, right?
Yep.
And bass were the most bad-mouthed fish when I got there. The
Yeah.
high school fishing team came up like probably 2 or 3 years into it. And after 2 or 3 years of the high school fishing team, and they had some good kids, right? Like,
For sure.
They were hammers.
Grand Rapids, yeah.
This is like your Easton Fothergills, your Kobe Koenig.
That
like,
kid's going somewhere.
Yeah, right?
I'm
Like,
excited for him.
so, like, they were winning all this high school stuff. And all of a sudden, like, it started in the community, but all the dads were like, well, bass fishing's kind of cool. Like, it's not walleye, but it's kind of cool. And then, a few more months go by, and all of a sudden the dads are buying rods and reels and tackle, and they're like, my kid just likes to do it. A couple more months go by, maybe a year, and like, before I left, all of those dads and moms, they're all like, oh, this is so much fun. We love bass fishing. Like, bass fishing's more fun than walleye fishing and anything. And, like, I saw the diehard walleye country start coming full circle. Now, not everybody, but everybody that could touch that youth fishing stuff, that saw this bass fishing and these kids having just a time, all fell in love with it. And the ways that you could catch them. And just the, like, you got these dads that are like, well, yeah, I can go walleye fish from 7:30 in the morning till 8:30, and then they really don't bite until dark.
Right.
Well, now
right.
you and your kid can go throw at a dock all midday. Like
Yeah.
like they're like, oh my gosh, there is a place for this that I actually really enjoy. And
Yeah.
yeah. So totally coming full circle, and you're going to see just a lot more people enjoying fishing as a whole because of it. But bass fishing will be certainly included.
Yeah.
Just because of all the knowledge you're gaining.
Absolutely.
And I think partially the bass thing is just so many variety of ways you can catch them. Like, everybody loves it because you can do whatever. Like, it's a bass,
Yeah. It's the best part about it.
They're the most accessible fish, like from the bank to the middle of the lake. They're in Canada to Mexico.
Predator.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're literally everywhere, except for maybe out west.
Dude, some of them smallmouth. Have you been seeing some of them smallies, like in Idaho, Montana, like...
Not for size, but I've definitely
For
been paying
size?
attention about trying to, like, schedule a free trip out to Montana.
Fort Peck?
Well, like, they're giving away these bounties in some of the trout rivers. $10 a smallmouth.
What?
Yeah, you can pay for your whole trip if you just go catch, like, a cooler full of smallmouth.
You gotta kill them, though?
Yeah.
Man.
They're all like 10, 12 inches. And people are just going out there and just killing tiny smallmouth. Because they're like invasive, I guess. It's the weirdest thing. Like, coming from where we're at, and we're like, oh my gosh, like, I can't wait till the smallmouth get in here,
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh
Where
my
can we
gosh,
bring 'em to?
the smallmouth are here. It's the end of the world. Like, what? So yeah, they're
They're
like
salmon lovers, though?
So all you
the
smallmouth
salmon don't even... They go to die. Like, they
smallmouth
don't
fishermen head to Montana. You can pay for a trip by just catching some smallmouth, and I think you got to eat them, but it's a free trip.
If you're gonna eat one, it's gotta be... That's like 10, 12 inch size.
It's the right size, right? Coming out of a nice cold water river.
I don't like to cry during dinner, Andy.
Yeah, well, in that case, you
Food
can
is-
release the smallmouth and just keep the trout.
Never tasted my tears with my food.
Oh, so you got to eat more smallmouth.
She just haven't ate enough smallmouth yet.
You got to eat one to think like one, man.
You did tell me about a pre-tournament. It's steak for you, though.
Yeah.
You can't eat one before a tournament.
I would.
I thought that was bad luck. I thought it was steak.
Yeah, 100%. But like, you could have surf and turf.
That's a good point, yeah. So I do like surf and turf.
Yeah,
I
like-
don't know about smallie turf, but...
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Growing up on the border, like, we had plenty of fish fries that I'm sure a smallmouth made it into.
Oh, I've eaten them.
Like, there was plenty of gut hook smallmouth that I'm pretty sure we ate. Like, 99.9% sure.
I accidentally... I didn't know it at the time till after I ate it, but it was not good fish. And then I asked what it was, and it was smallmouth. And I was like, these are good size.
Quite large.
I was like, I just ate 15 years old of mercury and cancer probably, but this smallmouth tasted awful. It was so bad, dude. I don't understand it.
I get it.
I don't. How old are them fish? You think they're fucking...
I think it really depends where they're at, but none of them are young. Like, most of the studies I've read, a lot of the stuff that's like in that 4+ pound range, largemouth or smallmouth, is like 15 years or better.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, man, I mean, they're going to driver's ed, their learner's permit.
Right?
Like,
Or just thinking like that 5-pounder you caught last summer, Ben. That thing's been around for like maybe 20 years.
how many fucking power worms is that 5-pounder?
Right?
Man, I do wonder, like, how many big fish you throw, like, pre-live scope or in the grass even, like, I'm a big fish get thrown at that just don't bite ever.
Probably quite a few.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, sight fishing's painful enough, and with this live scope now, like, I think more often than not, those fish don't bite.
For sure. Since I got live scope, I realized how
I'm
bad
pretty sure.
I realized how bad we suck at bass fishing
Yes.
once we got live scope.
All fish. Just like, not even bass.
Dude.
Like, I thought
Yeah,
pike were
we
pretty
suck.
dumb and suicidal, and now I'm like, man, pike are tough to catch.
Really? I feel like I can still catch them.
Dude.
It's the only fucking thing I feel like I can catch on
That day
live
on
scope.
Go, we couldn't catch anything, man.
Oh, that day, yeah, for sure. But we didn't try to scope that many.
I don't know, tried enough.
We didn't do the one thing.
I know, there's bass everywhere.
Yeah. All right.
Been real, man. I appreciate it.
Dude, high level fishing conversations with Andy Walls cannot be beat. And you guys just got a little taste of one. And appreciate you making the trip out here, dude. It's just always have respect for you as an angler. And
Well, any invite into the galaxy, I'm always here, man. I appreciate it, and it's awesome.
hey, dude, I appreciate you not entering into a lot of the major tournaments this year. And yeah, there's another spot in the money for everybody. So,
Right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, maybe I'll get a wild hair and try to jump into something, but I thought about the Champions Tour again, but I'm just not going to do it.
You
So
should.
maybe we'll see.
There's-
Maybe I'll show up.
It's guys like you that go show up and do good. So I'm all about the competition. I
don't think I can make it in any of those this year, but
you got.
I might
enough
show
of
up
a
to something.
You got enough of a handicap with your gas tank that I'll allow it.
Yeah.
You should. You should show up for sure. But
All
no,
12
dude.
gallons, yeah.
Do you think I'm gonna catch a December bass tomorrow, Andy?
I do. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I know you're going to give it 100% effort. So, yeah, it's going to happen.
I love it. Well, this is Andy Walls, ladies and gentlemen. Bass Galaxy checking in, checking out.